Hello, whoever's there. G'day, J Duffy. How are you, mate? Just an impromptu, nothing else. I'm not having a live stream tomorrow. It'll be next week. So, as a Christmas special. So that's. Anyway, I got a haircut. You see, razor quite number one on the sides and number two on top. So very short. Uh, Yeah, I don't know. I just went crazy. I decided the old man had actually cut all his hair off. I go, yeah, why not? So I decided to do the same. As you do. You do these crazy things sometimes, and people like your friends go, what the hell? You go, yeah, whatever. So I decided to cut it very, 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 very short. So, yes. Joseph, how are you, mate? And Cecile, how are you? XR? Ah, thank you, thank you. Looking slick. I've got a few other remarks from some of my friends, but anyway, what happened? Because my hair was slightly longer. As you probably saw in the previous live stream and all that, it was actually even longer than that. And then they saw me like this, they go, I said, oh, well, dad's influence on me, blame him. Can you quickly go in depth at why protein doesn't cause cancer, mTOR, etc., etc., etc.? Well, we know hormones have both anabolic, catabolic, and a whole lot of different processes in the body. But while insulin, things like that, both normal cells and cancer cells can use that sort of signaling. It's not the cause of cancer because, for the simple reason that if it was, cancer would be endemic. Just think logically. If protein was, the Maasai would be riddled with cancer. The Inuit would be riddled with cancer. Everybody would be riddled with cancer. All the bodybuilders would be all cancer like mad. So it's just nonsense. It doesn't make any logical sense. There has to be, look, in science, you either have something that always associates or it doesn't. Or if it's got inverse relationships, it's irrelevant. So cancer and carbohydrates, fat, and protein are all associated. Why? Because they have an anabolic effect. So they upregulate hormones which are involved in growth. If you undereat or fast, you're actually downregulating those growth pathways. So the growth isn't the issue. What is the issue is damage to the mitochondria. We know that even Warburg and Seafried have shown quite clearly. You take mitochondria that are damaged and put them in a normal cell, they go cancerous. You take the nucleus of a cancer cell and put it in a normal cell with healthy mitochondria, no cancer. It even becomes viable slightly, which shows quite clearly that cancer has nothing to do with oncogenes and nothing to do with that's a downstream effect. Like, when a cell needs to survive, and it doesn't get taken out by a weakened immune system. So if you're poor diet, poor lifestyle, maybe a severe, and on top of that a severe viral infection, we always have rogue cells from senescent cells. What do senescent cells do? They transmit a cytokine called CT38. That cytokine is actually telling the immune system, come here, I'm damaged. Remove me from the system, from the body. That's what they're saying. Remove it from the body. So obviously, if you've got a compromised immune system, well, what do you think is going to happen? That potential damaged what we call senescent cells, that damaged cell will continue to degrade if not removed. And if you've got too many, which the immune system cannot handle because of inappropriate lifestyle and diet and everything else, maybe you were exposed to high levels of radiation. So you had a lot of systemic cells that are damaged in the body. So as a consequence, you have the potential to have a lot of cells that could go cancerous. With a healthy immune system, obviously, radiation can actually damage a lot of the immune system as well and create senescent or damaged immune cells that can't respond to remove those cells that have gone haywire, so to speak. So you first have to damage your cells to the level and sufficient number, and your immune system not being capable enough to respond and deal with those things. So, food of any sort has zero relationship with cancer. Food is food. Obviously, certain types of industrial processed foods have high deuterium, and the high deuterium is what actually does the damage to the mitochondria over time, especially when you consume a lot of these things, especially seed oils, which are very high in deuterium, beyond the toxic level of 180 parts per million, which becomes fairly impossible for the body to be able to deal with that load. And if you're eating these things on a daily basis or a number of times a week, you can actually sustain quite a lot of mitochondrial damage. It's the same thing with if your mum's really, modern day mum with a lot of health problems and all that, and diabetes and whatever else, and you then add all that in, you're going to get a lot of damage. And that child is going to be damaged. And then the child goes on a very poor diet and gets even more damage and potentially could have childhood cancer, as you can see. So, these things don't happen by accident. So protein, mTOR, has nothing to do with it. Obviously, both normal cells and cancer cells can use these hormone signaling molecules, as simple as that. So again, where are they being activated? So if they're being activated in tissue, certain tissue type, they'll have a different effect. As an example, if it's actually activated mTOR, IGF-1, insulin, if they're activated, as an example, in the muscle tissue, which is what protein does, well, you're just going to grow more muscle, aren't you? And we know that on a carnivore diet, you just eat more protein and just build up more muscle. There is a threshold you can't get over. Once you get beyond that threshold, then it becomes, problematic. Then you can't sustain that. The body just sort of starts becoming extremely catabolic in its response, and depending on how much fat you're taking in, food energy, so to speak, or the stuff that provides the precursors to ATP production, which is electrons and protons. If that sort of is a completely different issue altogether, and different mechanisms and whatever else. So absolutely nothing to do. Protein has never had anything to do. And my father, even though he did Jabba the Hutt, which we know creates turbocharged cancers because it weakens the immune system, by putting him on a protocol of using, things like to reduce Mr. Spiky in his systems, which I've talked before, with reducing that, and also a higher protein diet to fix his kidneys, to improve his kidneys because he had a slightly elevated blood pressure and kidney atrophy. Eating more protein grew his kidneys, made them healthier, and also his cancer halved. So, if protein was the problem, that wouldn't have happened. And the turbocharged and all that, because we did all the other protocols to strengthen the immune system was able to continually remove and reduce the amount of cancer in his kidneys. Because in the end, the immune system is going to go, those T cells, natural killer cells and T lymphocytes, they are the ones that are going to take out a lot of these cancer cells over time, and his cancer will decline and continue to decline as it has. So, obviously supporting it with taurine, supporting it, you can use TA1 peptides and stuff like that, and obviously reducing the deuterium load to improve mitochondrial function and stuff like that, and reduce oxidative stress with taurine in the mitochondria and heal them, upregulate melatonin, which improves even further, redox potential or the functioning of the mitochondria. That's what it means. So, that actually that improves the energy status of the cell through oxidative phosphorylation, which means you're using protons and electrons, basically. And so then you're producing more ATP. That means the organelles in the system are able to take that and improve their functioning, and the cell can shift to a more healthier state. Anyway, so yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit, because otherwise the Inuit, who did not even have a word for cancer, and only the ones that are actually close to foods of civilization will know what they are: processed carbohydrates and refined sugars and oils. So that's a shit that actually puts a lot of deuterium in the system that damages the mitochondria, and then the rest is history, so to speak, or for that person, definitely. Is it fine to take taurine powder mixed in milk? I don't care how you consume it. That's your problem. Why would it be an issue? Milk has taurine. Meat has taurine. Sprinkle on meat and eat it with a steak and butter. I don't care. That's your problem, how you actually consume it, or you can actually just put it in water and drink it down as well, stir it and drink it. People consume it in different ways. I do recommend people consume it with food and not without food. There are cases without food, but that's a different thing. That's another discussion for another day. So, syndrome, yes. How are you, mate? If homocysteine is elevated and deficiency in B vitamins, deficiencies in B vitamins, would taking taurine without B vitamins lead to depression or anxiety? Well, you do need B vitamins. Uh, if your B vitamin status is low, I don't recommend people take B vitamins for long periods of time. They should get it from the diet. That's what they should do. But short term, you can actually get methylated, only methylated. So, where you've got methylfolate, methylcobalamin, methylated proper is the way to go. And if you take them, it should be fine. You take it for about a month, and that should improve your vitamin D B complex status. Now, if you've basically got issues with, you could have MTHFR issues, riboflavin is really important. I've done a video ages ago, it's probably 4 years ago plus, that I did it, and it just showed that if you've got MTHFR issues, which you may have, riboflavin is the thing that actually can correct it very fast by either drinking a 16-ounce of glass of milk will give you practically your 100% for the day, plus meats and animal foods are pretty high in riboflavin as well. So that's important as well. That's one of the critical ones. when it comes to homocysteine and dealing with, enzymes not functioning properly that are riboflavin dependent. And in particular, it seems like the requirements go higher with pretty much go away. But all those little, whatever, insects flying around, miniature butterfly, whatever. Go away. Hell. And I was saying, well, I was rudely annoyed. Was and so obviously, you can deal with that issue by making sure that your B vitamin status is properly. That's one way of doing it. Or just, eat foods that are higher in those sort of B vitamins, and it should correct over time. Porky, piggy, as long as you can tolerate, you've got no issues with piggy. That's really high in both things like niacin, thiamine, B1, B3, which are important for energy production. So they can help quite a bit as well. So get a bit of piggy. That's, I don't know what your faith is or your religious or whatever. There is things like tuna that are also good sources of those B vitamins. Anyway, in the bodybuilding community, people are saying that you can gain muscle at maintenance calories, and they say it's required inadequate protein, healthy body, fat 9% and the training stimulus. Well, people say all sorts of things and all that. Your requirement for protein is varied on the activity sort of level and all that. And obviously, if you're not getting enough, if you've got very low body fat and you're not taking in sufficient energy, you can't build muscle. You just can't, because it's something equivalent to rabbit starvation in that regard. And it's what a lot of what athletes do is they cut too quick and they lose some of their muscle gains, which they've built over time. What do you think people bulk up? They put a lot of energy and all that in there in order. Cutting energy too fast can be detrimental and all that. And usually pushing protein slightly higher while cutting energy can provide some gluconeogenesis support. So as you're to maintain, and also more leucine signaling to sort of mitigate against the effect of muscle loss, which is critical. So you end up losing more fat loss in a sense. So especially when you go, you can actually get this rapid effect when you go over. There's a little trick. So if you can go like over the 4 grams, the cutoff is about 4.25. And if you go between that or over like 4.5 or whatever, you'll start tearing fat off very fast at those levels of protein. It doesn't matter how much fat you put in, you'll still be tearing down fat because you've got so much leucine signaling happening at that level, and it will maintain and really you're going to allow you to rip quite rapidly without a lot of muscle loss in that regard. So it's a matter of, but you have to be very careful of it. And that also allows you to avoid rabbit starvation as a bit of a trick. It's not a healthy thing because it's quite stressful on the body when you're doing these sort of things. But if you're preparing for competition or whatever, I'm going to kill you. Go away. It's good for my ears for some reason. Why do you like my ears, you damn thing? Leave the ears alone. How dare you? Should have spocky ears done. Anyway, it's probably is a bit of sweaty. Maybe it's moisture that it wants. They say apparently mechanistically this is possible, and that calorie surplus does not lead to more muscle, only more fat. Depends, as I said, it depends on the leucine signaling and the sort of stuff you're eating. Okay, so are you engaging the Randall cycle potentially with surplus? It's really the Randall cycle that's in play here. That's why we say, like Jonathan and other people that will do like a carnivore type cut, and they have great success. Look, Jonathan won the British competition. I talked to Jonathan about these sort of things, about these protein things. And I've been, this high protein sort of approach to bodybuilding for a long time. I don't give a shit what people say. I don't care. People can do whatever they like. I know what works. Okay. And look at Jonathan. He's pro protein like me when it comes to, if you really want to push that envelope in performance. Most people won't tell you. The people that know will lie to you deliberately because they don't want you to know. You've got to keep the carbs out. You want to have sufficient signaling of mTOR, IGF-1, and insulin in your muscle skeletal structure. Because remember, you need stronger bones. And that's where I combine also taurine, because the amplification of protein synthesis in the bones to be able to have sufficient bone strength and rigidity to hold that extra weight that you're generating through building more muscle. Because this is another problem that a lot of these bodybuilders suffer if they don't do it this way, is they suffer a lot of bone fractures and damage to their bones, specifically because of building excess weight of muscle, but not bone. Got it? You've got to do both. If you don't have strong bones, you can't hold on to bigger tissue. It's just not practical. Okay? So this is where the little trick of, every single bloody meal has an extra taurine in it to amplify mTOR signaling in the bones. And some of the fat soluble vitamins are important as well for that reason. Why wouldn't it turn into glucose? Because basically, mate, it's demand driven. If you can keep very, very low your insulin, you can keep your insulin signaling to the level of muscle skeletal, it won't turn, in that regard. And even if some of it does, there's a small, because when you get to well over 4.5, you will get some of it going gluconeogenic. But at that level, your metabolic rate is so high because that signaling, the leucine signaling, is pushing the tissue growth. You're basically going to be using that very rapidly. So your gluconeogenesis goes up, but it's being utilized by your muscles. Got it? So the bigger the muscles continue to grow, they will turn more and more of that protein and the glycerol backbone, either one, they will turn it into glucose that is required by the muscles. Simple as that. Those filaments, they are driven by glucose, not fat. Fat drives the mitochondria in the cells. At the filament level, it's glucose. So the more activity and the more growth, you're going to have more thicker, more denser filaments. Well, what do you think? They're going to be powered on. They'll need more. But this whole concept the fear of protein is ridiculous, especially if you're doing this highly, this increased level of, for bodybuilding, we're talking now specifically. Most other people only need about 2 grams. Okay, 2.2 is what I go for. So most people need that. I only go for about 3.5 on my 1 day of training, which is on Wednesday. That's it. The rest is just basically 2.2 grams, and not bad for a 58-year-old, you know? So I just want to maintain those sort of muscles. I'm not into bodybuilding, as you know, and all that. But I do talk to a lot of bodybuilders because they want to know some of these tricks of the trade, so to speak. Anyway, where are we? Now I've sort of more or less covered that. One of their studies showing people who are low carb have lower muscle glycogen. That's just bullshit. They're usually on what are called vegetarian-based low-carb diets. That's what they're on. So it's a completely different kettle of fish. Low-carb diet or keto diets are either meat-heavy or vegetable-heavy. There's a large, so you get all these sort of studies. But, when they've actually done like Finney and Volker, who are the two top keto researchers in the field. I mean, Steve Finney now is retired, more or less. He's an emeritus professor, where Volker still does research in low-carb diets and all that with a lot of athletes, where he continually takes biopsies off them and puts them through a whole lot of regimens. So that's not what he sees. And many other who do actually in lab, where they lock people up in a lab and they actually do these sort of testing and all that over a number of weeks. So they get fat adapted, so they're properly functioning. Many of these people, their studies are done by 2 weeks, which is basically they're not even fat adapted, so they lose muscle as a consequence, due to the issue. And when you lose muscle, obviously you're going to lose glycogen as well, and that's due to people not being fat adapted. So these are just bullshit studies in that regard, because it takes a couple of weeks to fat adapt, and it can take up to a couple of months to get the high performance levels. Most people understand that, and so that's a non-issue at all. That's just bullshit in that regard. But when you're fat adapted, then it's a different kettle of fish. And if you're getting sufficient protein and fat, that's a completely different ballgame compared to these bullshit sort of studies and all that. So it's just crap. I've seen them all, and when you actually look at a properly designed study, you don't see. I mean, I actually saw one not too long ago where they did a carb centric and a low carb, and pretty much the level was similar. There wasn't much of a difference with people fat adapted and non-fat adapted or low fat adapted. So it's just nonsense, But when you get people who are from a SAD diet and then you try to put them on a keto diet over 2 weeks, I mean, really? These people are not fat adapted, They can't, their level of insulin is probably too high still. And so they can't activate hormone sensitive lipase. They're not getting enough, consuming enough fat. What's going to happen? They're going to be basically, cortisol's going to go up and try to create more glucose because that's their primary fuel still. It's just nonsense. And then they get these, and eventually towards the end towards the second week of the study, you get this sort of a slight increase in ketones, and they say, oh yeah, they're in ketosis. Still not fat adapted. They still can't produce enough metabolic water. It's nonsense. It all is nonsense, believe me. Anyway, possible H. pylori infections suffered here. Couldn't get my hand on the Reuteri strain you suggested. Still take a combination of probiotics. I have Reuteri in as well. Good enough. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, look, the other thing that you have to also do is take HCl. So pretty much betaine HCl. So get a betaine HCl supplement to acidify your stomach, because what it does is suppresses the proton pumps So you don't get enough acidity. You can't actually break down your food. You can't absorb then. You end up with too many proteins because you're supposed to denature all your food and break it down to simple carbs, amino acids, and fatty acids so you can absorb them properly. We don't absorb foreign proteins from animals. We take amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose, and then we put them in their right place, or glycogen stores, amino acids then go in to and are rebuilt into different proteins that the body needs. So that's what we consume. So pretty much if you're not, and also by acidifying your stomach, what you're going to do is you're going to suppress H. pylori. Taurine also has a suppressive effect on H. pylori. Now, hopefully you don't have a gallbladder issue, because if you've got a gallbladder issue as well, that's a different. Oh, you are taking. Okay, plus taking. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. Okay, just saw it just then. But if you've basically got a gallbladder issue, then you could actually end up with carnivore diarrhea as well. And that's not, when you have continuous carnivore diarrhea, it's usually a gallbladder issue, because the bolus that's coming out of your stomach is gonna hit your small intestine at the top of it, and that's where you're supposed to be getting your bile coming through the ducts, the bile ducts that go through the pancreas, and some pancreatic enzymes and all that, in order to emulsify, in order to and reduce and increase the pH, and so reduce the acidity, so it doesn't damage the actual intestine. What the body then does is flush through, sort of flushes through water into the small intestine, in order to, in a sense, to buffer the actual cells of the enteric system. So so you need um, to also keep that in mind. So let's say if you've got I don't know whether you've got a gallbladder, I'm just bringing this up as a potential issue. Then you would take basically something like TUDCA, and TUDCA should emulsify and improve the bile flow over time. So then you take certain bile salts a couple of hours after your meal, like 2.5, depending on how big the meal is. So you can actually, because you want it first to break down and then to be absorbed later and buffer, so that would reduce those sort of issues until an improvement in bile synthesis happened. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with a number of issues and you're trying to sort it. If H. pylori is the only issue, hit it hard with with basically betaine HCl, and with taurine, and that should eventually deal with that issue. I have a video called Under the Taurine playlist. There's a video there that covers that, about stomach issues. Anyway, question. Harry, please rant about glycine and NAC, particularly on supplement issues. Thanks. NAC can be useful, breaks down mucus, stuff like that, a few other things that it seems to be helpful for. So I don't have a problem with NAC. Dad seems to generate a bit of mucus, so I get him to take a gram, just a gram, no more. That's the maximum. And it's usually through the winter months and sort of spring months that he takes it, not all year round when he sort of really needs it. Glycine's fine as a supplement as well. But, if you're eating enough animal foods, I know a lot of people use it to sort of increase their glutathione levels. But, if you're getting enough in the diet. I don't see a need to supplement glycine. Personally, I don't see a need whatsoever. The methionine glycine, that's just nonsense. I've done a video on homocysteine where they've injected and pushed in methionine. Doesn't create any worse problems or whatever. It's just nonsense, all that sort of stuff. So the methionine glycine or whatever. just bullshit. There's a lot of these sort of things that are just bullshit. So I always say that people show me an actual study, a proper study. So they usually can't, but that doesn't surprise me at all. Well, let me. I hate. uh, yeah, so it's just one of those other things, sort of, that people are always basically saying, um, you know, most people will get enough. If you're eating eggs and you're eating meats and you also, let's say, chicken skins, what else? Pork skin, which is, my favourite, a sort of snack. Like, I've got a, sort of, I'm always having a bit of the crackle or stuff like that. I always enjoy that. So, you know, so you'll get enough in that regard. Um, so I don't see a need to supplement, is what I'm trying to say. You should be getting enough in your diet. If you're at least consuming 2 grams per kilo body weight in terms of protein, you should get enough of the amino acids you need for your body. If you're not, you've got a digestive issue. Your digestive system is not functioning properly for whatever reason. That's when you have to investigate that. But otherwise, it's a non-issue whatsoever. Well, oh, you're on TikTok? No. Oh, well, sort of. I do have an account, but um, I'm not. I'm occasionally posting a few things. There's a few, but it's not. It's more for personal reasons. So I haven't really promoted it. I do have the X account, which I do promote. So if you go under my previous live stream, you'll find the X account, you'll find the Rumble account, and you'll find the Odyssey account. So they are there. My TikTok account isn't there. So I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of at some point doing little video clips and maybe posting things there, like little snippets of things. Um, so I haven't decided yet. I'll think about it. I'm still thinking about it. Yes. Good to see you, mate. Good to see you up, Syndrome. Dave, always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure. I thought it was Sunday for a moment. Sorry about that. Old fella, you lost track of time. What's your official position on methane reducing chemical being put in cattle feed? Um, I, I'd give it a miss. We don't know enough. I don't know whether it probably potentially it seems like it degrades, so it's not going to get into the food supply. But obviously it's not good. It doesn't seem to be very good for the animals. It causes them certain health problems. And obviously, if you're going to cause certain health problems to an animal, it's not properly functioning. There is the potential risk that is going to have an effect on the quality of the end product that comes from that animal. So I do have some concerns, but I'm still investigating. The problem is there's not a lot of information out there. Industry, it's all bullshit, the information that industry puts out. The United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, very limited stuff. Sort of, well, I think the USDA is too scared to investigate. So they're avoiding investigating. And the reason for that is because they don't want the animal activists and other people like that to go after them. So they just chicken shit in that regard. And then obviously there are industry players that are trying to virtual signal. Obviously, we've got the big organisations that are fearful of a lot of the regulations that are coming in, the green regulations and all that sort of stuff, and sort of are trying to use these products to basically protect themselves from future regulations that are coming through. But it's still unclear how problematic it is. I would say if you can avoid, like I avoid like the plague, most of those meats anyway, because a lot of them come, in the big food chains. So I get either directly from sort of local suppliers in Tasmania, which don't use any of this sort of stuff, and also from there's another supply we've actually found, which is a family farm, and with Hello Kitty's lives next to me, so she's probably asleep now, or she goes early, wakes up at 5:30 in the morning. But anyway, I'm a night owl. She's the complete opposite, and so we're probably going to go in sort of halves into this, and so we'll bulk order together. So as I told her, I need to actually eat down my deep fridge, and once we do that in January, we'll sort of order some stuff together. So that's because it means you got lower delivery costs and stuff like that, and whatever. So and it's a local supplier. I like to support local farmers anyway, and the prices are competitive. Actually, they're very similar to supermarket prices, but at the same time, it's got more fat on it. Where rather than all the way supermarkets trim off all the fat, and then you have to buy tallow or use butter or whatever. These beef, porterhouse steaks and stuff like that still have this amount of fat on them. So definitely it's the way I'm going. I've had another farmer in the past that always was a problem with the fat, leaving the fat on, and I used to get it from the farmer's market, but many times you'd turn up, and if you hadn't pre-ordered, you'd get something with which was too lean, and that was annoying. So yeah, so it was always a problem. Now we've found a farmer that's more reliable. You tell him this is what we want, and they deliver exactly what you want. Practically, it's number 2 on top, and on the sides, as you can see here on the sides, that's number 1. So really, really short. So, yeah. Blame Dad. He influenced me. Got to blame someone in this world. My feelings are important. Apparently, I'll give you a woke explanation. uh, yeah, that's how I feel about Jay Ducky sometimes. Sorry, Jay Ducky. Oh, we've already covered that. Eddie, you caught me. Oh, good, good. What's your question? Do you have any experience someone healing with hip arthritis without replacing hip by mother? 65 suffers big time. Rapic community suggests collagen, sugar, and progesterone. Well, they would, and that's their problem. They would suggest all this sort of shit. First of all, I don't like taking hormones because what you actually get is derangements in your own functioning or downregulation, all that. I'll give you an example. My own father. My own father is 90 in next month. So outside the accident that he had, which a vehicle hit him and he's caused him a worsening knee problem. So that's affected slightly his mobility. He still gets around, but slower, unfortunately. And at that age, but he had not a broken bone or a fractured bone. What does that tell you? More protein and taurine, very important, taurine to amplify protein synthesis in the bone. Fat-soluble vitamins, which means animal fats, are very important, but more protein. Now, collagen can be useful, don't get me wrong, but you can always eat more meats with connective tissue. In the end, even if you're taking collagen supplements, as an example, unless you've got the sulfur, which is that keratin binding, it's not going to work as well. And then the other thing is, at the end, all this meat, whatever you consume, it all turns into amino acids. Remember, even from meat, you're only using for protein synthesis 32%. That's all, 32%. Your best source, which is about nearly 50%, 48 to 49%, depending. There's variations on eggs, but eggs are even higher in that protein synthesis thing. Plus they have cholesterol, which large parts of your cells are crowded by that. And the synthesis in older age is less sufficient in that regard as well. So I would say your best bet with your mum is to eat more eggs and more meat, which would be very helpful for her. Sugar has no place. The body can produce its own sugar when it needs it, so it has no place in the body whatsoever. Why would you want to glycate a whole lot of proteins is beyond me. That's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. They've got no idea what they're talking about. We see it in their own community, a lot of health problems and a lot of supplements and a lot of recommendations of things that are not required. There's a difference between helping your body to function better and a different thing, having to pump yourself with a whole lot of things like, artificial hormones. Just not the way to go. Let's put it that way. Then again, what's your mum's vitamin D status? That would even be more important than this nonsense that the repeat community are talking about. So if your mum's vitamin D status is poor, well, she's going to have poor bone, musculoskeletal health, isn't she? Let alone, you want the therapeutic levels. It's pretty much between the 175. I have to remind myself. 175. So, uh, 83 was Dad's, which is 72.2 nanograms per milliliter. So Dad's, because in Australia we use the nanomoles per litre. So that calculates out at 72. So between 175, which is 175, is 70 to 200, which is 80, is that therapeutic level to aim for. So I got my father's up to 183, and it's more or less sitting there for most of the year, which is good for anti-cancer, cardiovascular health, and a lot of other things, and also improving issues of this sort as well. Then you've got to work out whether there's issues with calcium genetics or not. There's a lot of things that can be at play. And so there's another thing that my criticism in the carnivore community, that 24% of the population do have these genes. So there is a video that I've made. If you search it, it's called, it has to do with the increasing blood sugar on a carnivore diet. And it's due to a calcium deficiency where people are doing the lion's diet and they have these genes, which 24% of the population has, due to Yanomami, or whatever they're called, the population in Central Asia, Indo-Europeans, that brought these pastoral genes into the populations within the Eurasian steppe, and pretty much the rest is history. And so 24% of the population now has this situation where if they're not getting enough calcium from dairy, then they'll be deficient. And that also could have an effect over time. So all this sort of stuff is wonderful. You're welcome as well. Anika, but yeah, natural life. I need to do a new video. I'm not going to be recommending their product anymore, because they lost the market. They lost the supplier in the US and they've gone to China. So, and I'm not sure whether they're still using the free form type or not, because China doesn't produce a lot of free form taurine, which is the problem. So, yeah, give it to a bodybuilder friend. They'll like the old taurine style. Okay, how are you? What else? But still insist at a point it becomes supply driven, even lower than the intake you're suggesting. Look, me, Bart, and Jonathan have a slightly different view. I mean, not too long ago, Bart actually believed that 1.76 was the level. He sort of shifted to 2 grams. I haven't had a chance to speak to him on this issue like I did with the PUFA stuff and all that, and got him to come across to my thinking. Jonathan's been doing the bodybuilding, a lot of experimentation on these high levels, and I've been chatting with Jonathan. Bart's going on old literature, unfortunately. I don't believe this concept that that you at some point the body will produce, and even if you let's say for argument's sake it did, with a lower insulin level because you've got high glucagon, which has a counterbalancing effect. So you've got a low insulin to glucagon ratio. Where do you think that's going to go? You're going to pee it out. So even if that was to happen, you're going to pee it out. So it's not going to be an effect. So in that regard, if it's free form, it's fine then, Anika. If they're still buying in the free form, then it's fine. Yeah, there are some relatively okay suppliers in China that are producing free form. It's the non-free form suppliers that are the problem, because the method that is used to extract the free form is less problematic. It's the problem is the other suppliers that are doing the L-taurine thing, and they're using certain chemicals and they actually bind things to the taurine. That's why they have to call it L-taurine. It's not a free form. But they do it that way because it's a cheaper process. So, okay. So where was I? Anyway. So the thing is, on that issue, I don't believe that there is any real science out there. The majority of the science out there that is looking at this sort of supply-driven issue, that talks about the supply-driven, it's all confounded with carbohydrates, so elevated insulin. It's bodybuilders that are basically taking carbs and stuff like that. And it's looking at bodybuilders who we know consume a lot of carbs and a lot of fat at the same time when they're bulking up. and they will drive higher levels. Again, on the other hand, and that's more because they are driving, because as a consequence of what they're eating due to the Randall cycle, and nothing to do with the protein. It just amplifies the insulin effect when in the presence. I'm going to make a video on that anyway. You take the glucose out and that effect goes away. So I just haven't got around doing it. So it's bullshit. All the studies are confounded with carbohydrates. When you take away the carbs and you're looking at clearly ketogenic, low carb, Randall cycle deactivation, you do not see this. The problem is there is limited research in this space with minus carbohydrates. There's your problem. So obviously the literature is tainted with carbohydrate-centric analysis and results. So I just take all that research and just throw it in the bin, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no science that basically covers that. Absolutely not. So it's just bullshit. And with experimentations that Jonathan's done, because he's a bodybuilder, pro bodybuilder, he knows exactly these sort of levels. You know, he does right up to over 4, okay? And he's ripping, shredding, okay? So if that was a problem, we would see high blood sugar in his system. We don't, even though he's consuming at the same time dairy products, which we know have high sugar. So complete and utter nonsense. You know, what, is he a freak? Is he the exception to the rule? I doubt it. So I don't see that. But if you're a bodybuilder which does throw in a lot of carbohydrates at the same time, that's a different state of anabolism, completely different state of anabolism, and the hormones are signaling slightly differently. So yes, you can get then not a supply, but basically, the body kicking to that as the primary fuel when somebody's bulking up. That's not very good for your mitochondria. Let's put it that way. If I'm going to use excess, I'm going to use low deuterium type sources with fat rather than carbohydrates to drive my energy production as my demand for energy goes up, because I'm increasing my protein intake and my hypertrophy training. What's going to happen to my energy requirements? They're going to go through the fucking roof. If that's going to happen, if I'm basically carb-centric, what do you think is going to happen? So, yeah, I think, yeah. So the way I view that sort of research is it's shit. But unfortunately, we don't have bodybuilding type research which is ketogenic or low carb. Just doesn't exist. Even Finney deals with athletes who are like marathon runners, cyclists and people like that. Unfortunately, that's what they dealt with, not bodybuilders. And so we don't have anything in the bodybuilding space. All we have is anecdotes where carnivore bodybuilders do this and they go, I'm getting the results and much faster. But some of them won't even talk about it because they've got clients who they are training and they don't want people to know this, which also doesn't help the arguments within our community. I don't give a shit because I've got no clients. I don't give a shit. I'm just basically telling you how it is. Now, you can try it and get the success. You don't want to try it, that's your problem. Oh, Dom's here. Thanks, mate. Ah, coffee and mince pie. Thanks, Dom. Long time no see or hear from. Anyway, I've been occasionally on the Zoom session, just talking to Richard and Paul sometimes, but I need to basically re-promote the Zoom thing to try and get a few people to come across, and yeah, I'll do that. I'm going to do that sometime in the now that I'm sort of winding down. I've still got Dad, had to. Was in, for his cataract operations. Now we've seen the doctor, we've sorted that out. So, at least that's progressing now. So January, late January, early February, that'll get sorted out. So at least we're starting to tick off all his boxes of these things. So yeah, things like that have kept me busy with family and work, and we lost half our staff, so we're retraining. I mean, in January, I'm actually going to take a bit of time off in February. For the reason I'm not taking this period off is because it's going to be quiet, so I can do some training modules and some training videos, and some documentation as well for transfer of knowledge. So we've got something created that I can actually, when we get new people and you can go, well, just look at this stuff, do the module. So that bloody will save a lot of time and hassle and stuff like that. So yeah, not able to join the Sunday talk as usual, working, but that's changed. Back to the UK for now. Ah, okay, good to hear. Good to hear. So yeah, so I'll at some point uh, do that. And thank you, Anika. And I think that was in regards to the Taurine. Now, back to the where I was. Where was I? Cover that, cover that. Just your hello, hello, hello. Hello to you. And I cannot pronounce that Russian name. Peck Key? Or, sorry for not being hello to you as well. Well, I think there is a certain level of plasticity with the brain, and I don't think that it's actually, when we're looking at the general population, yes, but I think that's a consequence of high deuterium foods that have actually caused more damage to the mitochondria systemically throughout the whole body. And then on top of that, you've got your a weaker immune system that can't clear out a lot of those senescent cells. So you've got more, derangements around the body. And that includes the brain. And so you could say the level of processing capacity of the brain does start declining. So if you shift, on the other hand, away from that sort of approach, you can sharpen your mind on a species appropriate diet. And that's what we're doing. I mean, I look at myself. Sometimes I do live streams that go on for hours. Most people couldn't do that. I couldn't do that a couple of years back, when I was having my cardiovascular issues. I couldn't do that. I was in a different state. Now I can go for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours if I want to. And for the simple reason that I have the capacity. I've improved my mitochondrial health. I've improved my health in general. Plus, I've increased probably my brain cells, because what does mummy's milk have the highest in? Taurine. What's taurine involved? In creating new stem cells in the brain to create new brain cells. Okay? Taurine synthesis after 65 declines rapidly. So if you're 65 or over, why aren't you supplementing taurine as a biohack to increase your brain cells or stem cells in the brain? So, and by also using taurine to improve the health of your mitochondria systemically throughout the body, you'll retain more youthful, healthier cells in that regard. And if you want to go to the next level, you can always take cerule to produce new cell lines, so to speak. That's a slightly more expensive option, but that's an option that people can take. Depends on what you want to do with your life, or, you know. So, in that regard. But I would also say that there is probably uh, ways that people think that can be a problem as well. I think if, as humans, we can sort of get into uh, a sort of a sort of a sort of mode where our approach to life, our approach to thinking, or where we, and this probably relates to sort of the decline in energy that happens due to deuterium, due to damage and all that, also makes you less willing to, look at things and investigate things, because you don't see it in tribal societies. They are wise old men, until they drop dead due to no more cell division. Our men now, our older men and women, what do? They end up in nursing homes, can't even recognise themselves. That's from a lot of deuterium damage, from high carbohydrate, high seed oils, which are high in deuterium ions, and those deuterium ions have neutrons, and those neutrons damage the mitochondria, the ATPase, the little nanomotors. They slow them down or damage them, they break them, and then they don't work anymore. Then your mitochondria are effed completely, and your energy production declines. So you've got less capacity to be able to construct and analyze and do things and heal as well, all that sort of stuff. Okay, what do all modern people have? Gastritis. Is it all due to? Pretty much. It is pretty much that. Thoughts on RFK Jr. wanting fluoride out of the water supply in the US? People say that the evidence that it's harmful is weak, only occurs at very high amounts. Look, as far as I'm concerned, I avoid fluoride. We only need trace amounts, which we get from the food. We don't need above trace amounts. That's the reality. So, and most of the research is done from industry. So I wouldn't rely on that. As a precautionary thing, it's best to avoid that sort of stuff. There are plenty of countries that have no fluoridation, and they don't have a problem. Anyway, instead of dairy, can one consume bone broth, a source of calcium? You can consume whatever you like, sardines, bone broth, whatever you like. That's up to you. Yasu. It is not recommended to eat beef liver frequently because of the high copper content. Are there any safe organ meats? What happens if you eat pork, kidneys, or heart every day? Shouldn't be an issue. But you don't look. Even tribal people, they consume some organ meats as a multivitamin. They just cut small little bits and stuff like that, and that's fine. Small amounts is fine on a daily basis, not an issue. I think excessive amounts of anything, even B vitamins. I mean, give you an example. You take excessive amounts of pantothenic acid, which is essential. You need it. it can bioaccumulate. I did a video ages ago. I don't know where Bart's put it. I think he's put it on his Odyssey site, where because he took all his stuff off at a period of time, and that's what I did. And I actually showed the research. I may actually ask him if he hasn't put it anywhere. I'll put it on my site. I forgot about that video, but I actually showed that pantothenic acid can store to some extent. It was believed that it couldn't, but it can. So, and in excessive amounts, what can actually happen is you can get insomnia. It affects, the back part here, these sort of areas. In the lower around your neck, there are the cells there. They have an effect. They have a role with the sleep cycle, and they can be affected by excess amounts of pantothenic acid B5. And as a consequence, this can induce insomnia. This is why I don't, unless somebody's got a deficiency, you don't need to consume a lot of organ meats. If you're going to consume any of the organ meats, because of the high CoQ10 in hearts and taurine, I'd consume hearts if I was going to consume anything. So it's a muscle meat type thing, but it's more fibrous. That's the only difference. Some people, I know, will get like mince, and then they'll also mince hearts and combine them and create patties. So that's another option. So if you're going to go for organs, that's the way of going. As far as copper goes as well, I know a lot of people think that you can get copper toxicity. You can get manganese toxicity. But guess what? Why do vegans and vegetarians get manganese toxicity? Has anybody asked? Guess what organ actually excretes excess retinol, which is in liver, excess copper, excess manganese? Which organ excretes these excess amounts? Gallbladder. So if you don't have a good liver and functioning gallbladder, which most people don't nowadays because of their poor diet in the past and still trying to resolve, organ meats may not be a good idea because you can't excrete the excess amounts. So is it copper toxicity or the inability to excrete? Because I know that my people on the west coast of Greece consumed a lot of liver. Probably another reason why there's more MTHFR issues, methylation issues in that part of the world. But anyway, I never heard of anyone getting copper toxicity in a Grignon in the 1970s when I was a youngster there. And I used to also consume a bit of liver, and I was on a general diet with some carbs. I never suffered from any copper toxicity. So good functioning gallbladder may be the key reason for these issues. The problem is you can't do research on humans or put them in, I'm caging you. Let me out. Something like that. And pretty much that means we don't know. But we do know that a lot of these things are due to issues with your gallbladder. And I know that some people have consumed very high amounts and never got any toxicity, either retinol or this. So I'm completely on the fence because there is no science to show. So is hypervitaminosis and excess copper toxicity and manganese toxicity a real thing or a consequence of a dysfunctional liver gallbladder? Question mark. Because there isn't any robust science. But until there is the precautionary principle, first of all, we don't need excessive amounts of copper, retinol. You need some, but you don't need excessive amounts. I usually say to people, at most stick around the 5,000, you know, IUs for both vitamin D and retinol per day. I mean, obviously, that guy that was having 25 eggs a day on average was in the 6,000 plus range. But he was primarily just eating eggs mostly, with very occasional few other foods. He had an addiction to eggs. So, when you're eating some meats and stuff like that, as long as it's around about 5 to 6,000 IUs, won't be an issue, shouldn't be an issue. As long as you've got good functioning, gallbladder and liver. So those are the critical things. G'day, mate. Crypto fan. Well, why do you need it? Give me a reason why you need it. I think there was. Hold on. Let me just see if I can find a link. I had a link somewhere. Where was it? Anyway, I can't find it anyway. Look, there was a whole raft of side effects. I think one was nausea, the other one was headaches. I can't remember the rest of them. But there was, people say that it helps with inflammation and stuff like that. Yeah, it may. But do you need it? If you're on on a species appropriate diet, which is low inflammatory, do you need it? And I don't know what the long term effects are going to be on something like that. So it's not something I would recommend. It's like there's a lot of compounds out there that have medicinal. That's it, the word medicinal properties. But even though they have medicinal properties, are they a good thing? I mean, even milk thistle. I would only put people on if they've got a liver problem and all that for a short period of time, a couple of months, and then that's it. You're done. Just up the tudka to sort of help improve then the bile flow, which would be the way to go. I don't like going overboard with certain supplements, especially supplements that have got potentially other pharmacokinetic effects in the body, sort of pharmacological, their compounds seem to affect a lot of different pathways. I don't think that's a smart thing to do. And most of the research is industry. Obviously, they've got an ulterior motive to make money as an option for anti-inflammation. But I'm not somebody that would recommend this product. Let's put it that way. Probably got some tips. Duckfield Carnivore. Thanks, mate. Cigarette. No singing. my business is creating websites that fill them with content right now. There's a trend of people moving away from websites across social media and into the future, even ChatGPT. How can I survive? You sometimes have to find niches, even in the current industry you're in. You've got to find niches there's always going to be niches and all that. Also using AI for yourself to generate new concepts. I'll give you an example. I do some programming, some coding, but I also use we've now for our object-oriented programming sort of approach, we use Python as well, but specifically for FME, they've brought out now a new AI to help you problem solve the best transformers to use to basically get to be able to analyze data or spatial features, as we call them in mapping, in cartography, that is. So it's sometimes finding a way to enable, because you can actually be against this technology, or because it's an expert system, intelligence, maybe in 1,000 years, it's all bullshit, the rest of it. This glorification of AI, it's not AI, it's a very advanced expert system. That's all it is. And it has to have a lot of rules. If it doesn't have rules, it goes crazy and just gibberish you get out of it. It's just all this hype and is just bullshit. You have to be a clown or a complete moron to think that basically AI is real at this point in time in history. It isn't. That said, it is a great enabler for productivity. So where you could basically generate, using this technology, websites faster, where you would have to differentiate yourself in the market would be in a way where you're actually providing additional service. Because at the moment, people creating websites is just basically, yep, I created with that client and all that. Now, if you want to create a business relationship with these clients where creating a website is getting through the door, but creating a whole back office, a whole support network of tools and systems to enable them to become more productive in the way they work and in the way they do their e-commerce, that's a way where you can integrate yourself into these businesses. So, the website is becomes a secondary thing, where your primary activity is to basically create the tools that are needed to enable this person to be able to do things online more productively, in a sense. Because a lot of people get websites, but their whole back office is very inefficient. So you may have to improve your skill and knowledge about different businesses that you've dealt with in the past and investigate how their nuts and bolts in the rear work, and then create efficient, software tools that enable that more seamless vertical integration within their system. So, that's one way of sort of going beyond just the website. So you have to offer something above and beyond what other people are offering. Now, I don't know the sort of businesses you deal with, and what, whether they purely retail or whether they are purely service-based, where they're providing a service, not selling a product, as an example, or, there's all sorts of things. There may be where people are providing training modules, as an example, through their website. in that regard? What are the tools to basically, or web-enabled tools to make their ability to create training modules or products easier? Do you see what I mean? Sort of where you yourself become a bit more diverse in what you have to offer. Because in this sort of world, it's what can I offer more than just something like that? So I think you need to think about this sort of stuff um, in a more how can I put it? You have to make yourself, what's the word? God almighty. It's late. It's 10:30 nearly at night. It's like sometimes making yourself not useful. In a sense, you're trying to integrate yourself into their business where you become a support element to productivity enabling tools and processes and stuff like that. So you have to go beyond just that front, uh, like the yeah, I'm not thinking straight at the moment. But anyway, you need to find a way of being able to value add to their business in a sense, whether it's tools, whether it's processes, whether it's coming up with solutions for them to basically make streamlining their own processes and stuff like that. Um, I don't know what your other skills and knowledge are and stuff like that, but yeah, I hope some of that is of use. Maybe not. You're welcome. We covered that. Is there a way to understand how well mitochondria are functioning? Yeah, you can do biopsies. You can get biopsies done um, in that regard. Uh, but also how do you feel? If you're basically your general performance you've gone on a species appropriate diet for some period of time, but you're not seeing the same sort of results other people are seeing, that would indicate to me some level of mitochondrial dysfunction. So, how do I get rid of dandruff? Carnivore alone is not helping. There's a whole lot of reasons for dandruff. There's not one thing. Dehydration can increase it. Things like certain inappropriate things, J Ducky, can also make things worse. Sulfur deficiency, biotin deficiency. Are you eating enough eggs? Are you consuming enough taurine? There's a lot of things that can actually play a role. Anything that helps your hair grow and your skin improve. Some people can have not enough what is called hydration, sufficient hydration. And so, for whatever reason, and I'll say, go and get yourself, the reduced form of niacin, B3, which is nicotinamide. So you get a supplement of nicotinamide, which helps maintain hydration within the skin. And that can actually lower this problem as well. So flakiness and all that has to do with skin hydration as well. So that could be your issue. For some reason, you may need to be eating more piggy, my dear friend. Piggy. I used to have a dandruff issue. I don't. You may have to eat more piggy. Oink, oink. So maybe you're not getting enough of that, mate. Anyway, what's absorption difference between non-free form and free form taurine? No idea. Never looked into that one. Did I put you up before? I think I did. Uh, how prevalent is grain feeding livestock? Which countries grain feed the most? Pork, yeah, and chicken are fine, but I don't like how they taste. The US would probably be the highest because they subsidise their grains. Most other countries would be the lowest. Countries that do put a bit of grain, but a lot of silage. It's usually the leftovers. So, the silos, the grain silos, the silage at the bottom, which usually have stalks and many other things, plus a lot of stalks and stuff like that, which they'll munch up. So you end up then they put alfalfa mixed in and other things like that, which is non-grain in a sense. So in Australia, you'll get silage, you'll get alfalfa, and you'll get a few other things that are thrown in and mixed up. So it's not a pure grain because there's no subsidies in Australia for grain. So it's expensive. It's exported mostly, if not used domestically. So it's primarily the US that subsidises grain, and corn and things like that. And they have a lot of production of that, soy, and many other things. So that's the key model. In Australia, as I said, it's primarily grass, and then some of the companies will fatten the over a couple of, it's usually a month or two, and they'll basically get them into the feedlots, and they'll just basically fill those up. But it's not like in America, just pure grain and stuff like that. It's usually this mix of uh, other plants like grasses that they grow, which is alfalfa. So which is like a grass. They'll cut it and they'll put that in together with silage, all the stalks. So after people have taken away things like um, cotton, they've taken away the cotton seeds. So the cotton, they've taken away, the different grains and whatever else. You basically have the stalks left over. So they'll be cut up and they'll be munched up and they'll be created into a product, and sometimes mixed with hay, dry hay, mixed and then sold to farmers to add to their mixture. And that's how it works in countries like Australia. So it's not like it's low in that product tends to have like something like even less than 25% is grain. It can be even lower than that, like 15%, because it's too expensive. So the rest of it's, all these other byproducts of agriculture. So less of a problem. The bigger problem is the US. That's where the biggest sort of problem in terms of grain and stuff like that goes. Now in Australia, chickens are probably the only animal that is probably consuming the most grain. The only animal. Pigs, all sorts of things they feed them. But they're also good deuterium depleting machines. So even the ones that are eating crap, they still have lower deuterium levels, so less of a problem in that regard. But probably chickens would be probably the biggest problem in countries like Australia, the UK, and some European countries, but not, terribly. When you compare even grain-fed animals, even the US grain-fed animals, in comparison to actual grains, actual carbohydrates and all that, still going to be better. And if people can afford certain things, fine. If they can't, in that regard. Put Q before questions, please. Yes, exactly, Anika. Thank you. That's exactly what you people need to do. Question, is the Zoom meeting basically a Q&A? No. You just have a normal conversation, Jay Ducky, with a human. How are you, Harry? How's your day been? What's happening in your life? It's just a normal conversation. There may be a few things that we may get into a conversation about. It's more getting into having a chat with people. Q&A is the live streams. I'm not going to do Zoom session, Q&As. No. It's just being, it's chilled out, sitting back, that sort of stuff. I've used that stuff before. PQQ. Yes, apparently it's great to actually, produce new mitochondria. The only downside with PQQ, if you've got dysfunctional mitochondria, you can actually produce more dysfunctional mitochondria. And the more dysfunctional mitochondria can do is they can signal to the cell and say, we cannot produce sufficient energy in a good way. We don't know because we've got zero research. Could that initiate certain downstream processes that tell the cell to basically go rogue, cancerous, so to speak? We don't know in that regard. So if you've got, I always, as a strategy, say, if you're over 65, be very cautious using PQQ. Younger, probably less of an issue. If you're got a lot of mitochondrial damage, I'd give it a miss. I'd first focus on using taurine, good sleep practices by having circadian rhythm glasses and, increasing your melatonin and reducing your inflammation with a species appropriate diet, so then you can heal and improve mitochondrial function over time. And once you've actually improved the quality of the mitochondria, or you do the other little biohack, which is to those reparative organelles in the cell to improve all the functioning of the cell, which is early in the morning when you wake up, you pop out of bed and you go, what am I going to do? The first thing I want you to do is 3 grams of citrulline in combination with 1 gram of that powdery shit they call leucine, because that's what it is. And it's an acquired taste, let's put it that way. No more than 1 gram. I usually sometimes take like 0.9 of a gram just to make sure that I'm not going to cause any anabolic signaling. And the combination, this is a little biohack, what it does is it affects captor 1 and captor 2. So these are enzymatic pathways, a video that I still haven't made. And pretty much what it does is it improves the functioning of certain organelles. Dom, you're crazy. I like leucine taste. We're going to have a conversation, you and me. I like leucine. So, and that is really beneficial. If you do that every day, you'll improve the repair of your cells throughout your whole body. Got it? So you don't need then to pop and replace a whole lot of cells if you're healing them and healing the mitochondria with taurine and better sleep hygiene for melatonin. So it's a much cheaper way to improve cellular health and mitochondrial health. And then as you'll know, because you'll see your energy will improve over time. And as you improve over time your energy, then using PQQ to enhance the biogenesis of new mitochondria is a good thing. So it's something I wouldn't recommend to a cancer person, as an example, or people that have got a lot of mitochondrial damage. If they don't, that's a different thing. Everything has its place. Oh, thanks, Tom. I just noticed what you said. Anyway, math. Hello, Harry. Does BPC 157 help with candida, SIBO? Could you take timing dosage? Look, it seems to. There's a bit of literature that shows that it seems to, because it does have, but it actually primarily improves the functioning of your stomach and your whole digestive tract, which is collagen based. Now, the mucus layer and the proton pumps in your stomach, if they heal and repair, and any ulcerations in your stomach heal as well, because remember, one of the biggest parts of the body that actually produces the most BPC 157 is your stomach. Then your intestine, small and large, and then other parts in the body, very limited. So primarily the majority of it is produced in those areas of the body. So if for whatever reason your body, you've got ulcerations and stuff like that, maybe due to H. pylori, which means you're not producing enough stomach acid in order to suppress candida and SIBO. You may have a gallbladder issue as well, so you're not actually, because bile cleanses the small intestine of candida and SIBO. So if your gallbladder, that's where TUDCA comes in. So I would focus more on TUDCA, fix the gallbladder, so the bile is flowing properly, and then use BPC and taurine to fix the stomach and improve stomach acidity and functioning. And then you'll knock, and you won't get carnivore diarrhea as a consequence of having to buffer. Well, you can avoid carnivore diarrhea if it's for that reason that's happening, by using bile acids until TUDCA fixes the other thing if you want to go faster as an approach. But yeah, just throwing that out. Where's the Q? Where's this Q? Does Harry? Any recommendations of brand of Taurine available in Australia? As long as it's free form, because there's so many different brands out there now. There's a lot of different brands. There's not one brand. There's many brands. Has to be free form. That's all. Not L-taurine. Give that a miss. Free form. Got it? Free form. As in freedom. Free form. FORM. Anyway. A high metabolic rate associated with a shorter lifespan. Sort of. What gives you a high metabolic? Rats have the highest, very high metabolic rates. They don't live very long. So, yes, to some extent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a high metabolic rate is the cause of your lack of longevity or whatever. There's a lot of associated things, but it doesn't mean. Obviously, just because certain animals have high metabolic rates, there's also in between a number of animals that have varied metabolic rates and varied lifespans. So it doesn't track 100% in that regard. And we've never done like human experimentation because we can't. You'd have to lock people up for their whole life, twins, to see what happens by changing the metabolic rate, whether one lives longer or not. So we don't really know, is what I'm trying to say. Associated, yes, but do we know? No. Obviously, carbohydrates do increase the so-called, what we call increases in that sort of what some people consider metabolic, not rate, but of higher metabolism due to higher T3. But what they're missing is that high T3 is there for one reason, to support pyruvate dehydrogenase in the mitochondria. Once you go through this, from glucose all the way down to pyruvate, you hit the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex before you go to acetyl-CoA in the mitochondria, because beta oxidation also goes to acetyl-CoA. But in order to basically, for that complex to then move and to produce that acetyl-CoA, that initial parts of the citric acid cycle, well, you need T3. Beta oxidation doesn't. So it's a completely different sort of metabolism. So beta oxidation-based metabolic rate is completely different. So this is what I'm saying. Our knowledge and understanding is carb-centric. It's not fat-centric. So there's a lot of things that are just obscure. And it makes sense that, we know for excess T3 is associated with catabolism, like tearing down of muscles and bones and stuff like that. Not a good thing. And we see that on a protein deficient diet with high carbohydrates, most of the elderly become decrepit. Now, I don't think that's the T3, obviously. It's the diet. T3 is just sort of, it's amplified because of the diet. Okay? And hormones aren't bad or good. They just, as I've said this in the past, even my other videos, that I don't demonize hormones. Never have. Never will. But as I pointed out, that there's no logic for the body not to use reverse T3 to remove the excess, since beta oxidation doesn't need it. Why would the body be so stupid to leave more of something in the system when it doesn't need it? Do you get me? The body's smart. When I see too many things accumulating in the actual bloodstream, I'm going, why are they there? It's the same thing with testosterone. A prepubescent, basically, like you'll get some vegans that go, oh, I've got really hot, they like a little skinny little runt, and they go, oh, I've got higher testosterone than Sean Baker. They'll say, as an example, I'm going, are you utilising it? Because even testosterone goes through circadian cycles. That's why I say they have no idea what they're talking about. Even the medical profession has no friggin' idea. They're so stupid. We know the bodybuilders have very low testosterone. But look at their anabolism, look at their strength. But the receptor sites on their muscles, there's actually research that actually shows that when you are you're lifting weights, there are more receptor sites that are available for testosterone. Where do you think it's going? We know that too much free testosterone that ends up in the actual bloodstream for men, what do you think happens to it? DHT, alopecia, all this sort of stuff, or into estrogen. You end up with excess estrogen, which isn't a good thing for males. So this whole notion of misunderstanding how hormones work, the body, even when it's, people go, oh, my ferritin has gone really high. Well, what do you think? You're storing it. It's a safe storage method. When I see high transferritin or free iron, that's what I'm worried, because that's going to increase oxidative stress or derangements. You're transporting more than the body needs. That's what I want, those in the normal range. The ferritin, that's fine. It could be high for a number of reasons, but if you're eating more iron and you're storing it away, that's fine. Not an issue. So our whole understanding of physiology in the human body is carb-centric. It's around sick people that go to hospitals. That's what it's been based, all the clinical stuff and all that. So I just consider all that just bullshit, basically. Sandra, you just woke up. What a surprise. Yes, I like to surprise people. I asked Grok about the levels of deuterium in Martian water. It's about 1,000 ppm. Shit, really? When I asked it about the health consequences, it said it would be minor compared to all the irradiation. As I've said, there is a suppression on the information of deuterium, and it's deliberate. And I don't even know, what happened was, in the veterinary area, they were able to get a license to be able to sell deuterium-depleted water to dogs to reverse their cancer. So to lower the deuterium levels, to dilute the levels of deuterium in their body. And that's what they use, and the cancer reverses. Because what it really means is mitochondria improve. And the thing is, we know that dogs also have the ability to produce more taurine, even more than humans. This is the little secret that people don't understand. Humans have less capacity to produce taurine from meat directly, from methionine-rich foods. A dog that is on a methionine deficient foods, where it's not any animal foods, and it's going to be methionine deficient, that will have problems producing sufficient taurine, because taurine is required to reduce oxidative stress in the mitochondria and improve the mitochondria. Cats can't produce it. This is why it doesn't work. They use deuterium-depleted water, and Laszlo doesn't understand this. They keep on pumping all this bloody water in them, and then they have to go to lower, because they call it, what is it called? Deuterium depletion resistance. Another one of those wanker of an explanation, rather than using lateral thinking like an engineer does. You understand this, Tom, and understand that it's not that. It's basically the animal can't produce it. So if you can't heal the mitochondria, you can lower the deuterium levels in the body of that animal to a very catabolic level potentially, because you still need for your collagen structures, but you're not going to reverse the condition because it can't produce the taurine that it needs. The excess amount, where you have to over-supplement to try and bring the oxidative stress and heal the stuff. That's where your problem lies. So it's a completely different kettle of fish, or different issue. And this is where this disconnect exists between understanding of deuterium, understanding of taurine, and other things, how the body works, the physiology, to understand correctly that you still need to fix the mitochondria. Because as Seafried did, taking the mitochondria into a healthy cell and still produce cancer, if the mitochondria are not functioning properly, then it's still going to be signaling, and the cell is going to shift and upregulate the oncogenes and try different permutations to try and actually restore the functioning and stability of the cell. It's trying to survive. So it's running old programs. But heal the mitochondria, and it will signal we can do better oxidation. We can do, we can do oxidative phosphorylation. That's what I meant to say. We can produce ATP. You can turn off all that stuff, and we can give you the ATP to fix up yourself. Become senescent, from cancer to senescent, and then over time, with cytokine 38 being amplified with a healthier immune system, because taurine does improve, it remodels the thymus and improves slightly the functioning of the thymus, which we know shrinks with old age, and you have more senescent T lymphocytes, T cells. So less capacity to kill off these things, fixing, and even TA1 peptide that's produced in the thymus, that also can help. So these are ways of actually restoring better functioning of your thymus and your immune system to fight the cancer, so to speak. So, okay. Do you have any opinions on supplementing with colostrum? Yeah. It's useful. It improves immune functioning in the body, in particular in the gut. So it's useful. Put it that way. You're going to get benefits from it, a better functioning, and also it seems to improve the gut microbiome diversity as well. So if you've got, let's say you've used a lot of antibiotics, you've got really gut derangements, it can be helpful. Raymond, how are you, mate? Is it effective if I put taurine directly on my mouth? Because you can do it whatever. Probably not a good idea to snort it, but possibly that wouldn't be a problem either. But it could create a bit of choking and things like that. So it's probably not the best thing to do with it. In that regard, carnivore. Now due to high CAC score, annual stress test. Last one showed no ischemia, but ejection fraction is down 40% from 50. Put lots of salt on carnivore don't cause that. Unlikely. It may be that there's a potential for a calcium deficiency. You may have, like a 20, because calcium is important for the functioning, of the heart muscle itself. So you could be one of those unfortunate people like myself with a 25%, 24% population that has those genetics that need a bit more calcium. So it could be that. On the CAC score, I wouldn't worry. If you've got low C-reactive protein, that means you've got low inflammation markers. That's not a problem. All it is the body stabilizing the atheroma pre-existing atheroma. So you want the CAC score to go up because that calcifies and stabilizes the actual atheroma. It's soft plaque that kills you. So don't worry about it going up as long as your inflammatory markers are low. You're not doing anything inappropriate in your diet. The other part may be an issue with calcium. So you may have to investigate that, play around and see how that improves. Is it effective to pull? You've already asked me that. Snort it, my dear, snort it, if that makes you happy. If it just put in your food, combine it in the food, put a bit of butter and mix it up, or make it part of a dressing. Anyway, where's the queue? What are your thoughts on Doris protocol? No idea who the person is. To reset mitochondria, 200 to 300 of melatonin. I would not take melatonin. High dose of vitamin C. No, I wouldn't take also that. She also promotes keto. That's fine. But I would not be. Vitamin C is going to put a lot of oxalate in your system because we don't need much. We get plenty from the animal foods. And we also get the animal form. That's another video for another time to explain. I don't want to give too much away. I've got competition out there. But yeah, it's a non-issue. And we don't want in ascorbic acid, we want the animal form going in and then converting to ascorbic acid when it's required. To be stored in the other form. It does sort of stay in the cell to a certain amount, but that's for another day through GLUT1. I've said too much already. I shouldn't be giving you all these secrets. But anyway, eat meat, you're going to get enough. What we don't want is to basically be putting a lot of ascorbic acid in because it's going to turn into oxalate. And oxalate can damage the mitochondria. Not a good thing as well. So give that a miss. I disagree with that. Keto is fine. Keto carnivore even better because there's some keto stuff with plants and shit like that give them a definitely miss. Melatonin, I'm not into supplementing melatonin. I'll tell you straight out because it does interfere with long-term It's like with other hormones and things like that. I have a problem with supplementing, and I want the body to produce that. That means you've got to improve your sleep hygiene. See, I've got pairs of glasses. That's for the daytime. Knocks out 75% of what my screen puts out. That's for the afternoon after 4 o'clock until about 8 o'clock. And then from 9 onwards are these ones. Got it? You can't see it because the screens are also, I've got them to adjust the light brightness and all that. But yeah. So yeah, in that regard, is my focus is on improving melatonin production with taurine in the evening, and using things like that to improve the endogenous melatonin production, because you don't only have in the pineal gland. That's the sort of stuff that we're actually, telling the body to go to sleep. Your mitochondria produce their own melatonin, but the key cofactor is taurine. One of the key things that are required by the enzyme to basically produce the melatonin in the mitochondria. And that's all day long, because it has nothing to do with sleep. Got it? Now, it does go through a bit of a circadian cycle as well, and it seems light has something to do with that as well, that sort of cycle. And it's more, like UV light, blue light, all these different spectrums, but still, and it's not very well understood, whatever Jack Kruse thinks. But anyway, that's for another day. So really what we're talking about here is that don't interfere. I don't believe in supplement. I believe in supporting the body's ability to produce it. And mitochondria need both taurine and melatonin to improve their functioning and reduce their oxidative stress and damage in that regard. Doris is a Japanese independent researcher. She claims reversing cancer with melatonin, where melatonin actually repairs the mitochondria. Anything that repairs the mitochondria will improve cancer outcomes. That's what I said earlier. And I've said that multiple times in the past about the reasons we use taurine inside the body to supplement for cancer, because one, it causes apoptosis to cancer cells and senescent cells, plus it also supports a number of anti-cancer pathways and upregulates a number of important pathways, signaling pathways that are involved in suppressing cancer, plus increases melatonin inside the mitochondria. So you don't have to take it as a supplement. Now, for a sad dieter who's on a very poor animal-based diet, obviously that person getting the melatonin in a supplement is probably going to help them. So that's probably why she's having, with Japanese SAD, on a mixed diet, standard diet, she's probably having some success for that reason. G'day, Jonathan. Is there life on other planets, even if there is no taurine there? One brings. Well, I don't think so, personally. There may be, but I don't think so. I don't know what God's design is for the universe beyond man created in his image. I do believe that. But, the rest, no idea in that regard. But I'll tell you one thing. There are thousands of telescopes which are used by scientists, and thousands and millions of private telescopes looking out into space. They don't see anything. But apparently a few people do see aliens here or there. The one doesn't gel with the other. And then some of these people say they seem to be coming from interdimensionally. So they're not coming from outer space, they're coming interdimensionally. The only things that I know that come interdimensionally outside of time-space from the metaphysical realm are angels and demons. So, and those rounded sort of things, there is one type of design of angel that's described in the Old Testament that way. So, I'm a person of faith, Orthodox Christian, Eastern Orthodox Christian, just to be more precise. But I don't believe there's evidence for extraterrestrials at all. And if the universe has existed for a similar period of time and the same processes exist throughout the universe, if it does exist, it would be as primitive as us. So without interstellar capability, which even now we have no idea how you could do that. Well, seems to be a way of manipulating space, fabric of space. What was his name? The Mexican academic Alcuri, I think his name was. I'm not even pronouncing it wrong. Sorry to the Mexican people for pronouncing it awfully. But he basically created a sort of a concept drive to manipulate space where you expand it in one direction, pull it in the other direction. So you're not actually moving at all. You're stationary. That's why you don't even need anti-gravity systems or whatever. You're not going to die. You just get displaced. It's the space that actually moves, not you. There is zero velocity, so to speak, in a sense, sort of. But no, I don't really believe in that sort of concept at all. That there are little green men out there. I mean, probably Richard Dawkins does because he can't explain the complexity. That's his problem. But that's his problem. As I point out to my atheist friends, you tried doing away with God with string theory. You tried doing away with the problem of fine tuning in the universe with multiverse. Because you can actually create one version. In the end, 99.999999999% of the universes that are generated harbour no life, and that very minuscule point, 0.0000001, whatever, actually has some life, or the very small amounts that actually, and the complexity is with every division that actually happens. There's quadrillions of variations, and those slight variations allow for some complex structure to emerge, and then a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and then you have basically some sort of randomness evolved complexity. They seem to forget a thing called entropy that's always fighting against creating disorder, what we Christians call the death, the entropy introduced by man, by sinning. But anyway, that's how we see that concept. But when you actually look at what is predicted by these mathematized, or what I call rationalist modelling, we know some other rationalist modelling as well related to the climate. That's more bullshit you can poke a stick at. It came undone. The CERN experiments, not too long ago, found that there was no supersymmetry. You can't have string theory without supersymmetry. There wasn't enough muons for the other particles to basically, the standard model of particle physics basically fell apart, basically on what they were predicting. So no supersymmetry. You can't have multiple dimensions to support the multiverse either, because you need supersymmetry to be able to have more dimensions than the four space-time. So that all fell apart. So we're back to a universe that is very highly tuned under increasing entropy. And we know that because experimentally we can show that there is an increase in entropy as time goes past. The universe is pulling apart, decaying, falling apart. So we know it's increasing. So how can you create complexity without a mind? We call it God. Although, and it can't originate in this universe because we know, because of the microwave background radiation, we know quite clear in 300, if the universe lasts that long, and there isn't their final days, 300 trillion years from now, the wavelengths of that microwave radiation, they'll be stretched out. You won't be able to see it anymore. Anybody born in the universe in that future will go, oh, I live in a single, because the event horizon, as the universe expands, you'll be in a single galaxy universe, and you'll look out and you'll go, hey, it's always been here, static, always existing universe. Does that mean you're right? No. So just because there are limitations, and experiments pull apart all those theorizing, but the biggest thing, the thing that actually is the biggest crux, the biggest thing, when you realize it blows your mind, that we, created in the image of God, we use the divine language, which is mathematics. It's the creation language. Mathematically spoken, the Logos spoke the universe into existence. It is the language of creation. That is why we can create things. We're the only species that can. We use the divine language, which is mathematics, and it permeates. Because when you ask mathematicians, is there a foundation to mathematics? They say it doesn't exist. It seeps into the metaphysical realm. Even they have to acknowledge that. What is in the metaphysical realm? God. Anyway, went a bit too far into metaphysics there. Introduction to metaphysics for the layman. You would, Dom, you would. Oops. Yes, my dear, yes. I always like to surprise people. You should know that, Sandra. I'm not surprising people. What am I doing? Lilith, how are you, my dear? I hope life has been kind to you. Shelley's here as well. Amen, brother. Good to see you, Shelley. What are the causes of lipomass? You mean fats accumulating? Randall cycle. That's an easy one. Have I seen Mark Liston's book about fungals being associated with cancer? Fungus? No, I haven't. I don't believe in it, to be honest. I've heard about it from other people saying it, but I go, where's the mechanism? Well, even normal cells can have these things in them. That doesn't mean that it's just associated. Look, the body, it's like mTOR or the hormones. A cancer cell was a normal cell once upon a time. It just basically has a different metabolism now, an old metabolism, an ancient metabolism, in a sense, some people call it. So, yeah, it's just an association. It's nothing else. Obviously, if you've got a dysfunctional immune system and your immune system can't fight off candida, can't fight off all these other things, obviously these things will grow because it's fighting off the cancer. So you can expect other things to go haywire. So, but that's not a cause and effect. No, I have never seen any mechanism shown. My personal belief is that we know that when you put unhealthy mitochondria in a healthy cell, it goes cancerous. It's quite clear it's a mitochondrial disease. And the only thing that really deranges mitochondrial is severe oxidative stress, which can come from industrial seed oils, and deuterium damage to the ATPase. So energy production, the machinery is damaged. So, well, that tells you everything. Probably suffering from, I think Elon Musk has a massive blind spot as regards to humans' ability to survive there. Yeah, I think it's unless you're going to live underground. I don't think it's a. Yeah, look, it'll be a great achievement to go to Mars. I'm not against it, but building a civilization on Mars is a difficult thing. One that doesn't have a magnetosphere. It's the reason why. I mean, even our magnetosphere is, wanes and all that, and slightly small amounts of solar, the solar winds that come through, they strip off a bit of some part of our atmosphere, and it will reduce over time, very long period of time, but it does. Because it doesn't have any magnetosphere, the thinness of the Martian atmosphere, that's another reason why things crash into it and very hard to slow things down. So, yeah, I'm not convinced that it's a viable. I think a much smarter way would be to start colonizing the asteroid belt and exploiting the minerals and resources in that part would be a much smarter and economically, because I think anything that drives the colonization of space have to be tied to economics. If it's not tied to economics, exploration does not produce the results. People may explore certain things, they may go and map certain things like the Antarctic or whatever, but they don't settle in it because there's no viability to build anything. Or other parts, little rocky islands in the middle of nowhere. But, finding a real beautiful plain where you can, exploit resources and grow and develop things. Yeah. So I see that long term, as we deplete resources on planet Earth, which we still haven't, because we haven't even tapped into the resources on the ocean floor. As these things, probably in about 1,000 years from now, maybe more, we reduce, then out of necessity, we may have to go out there in order to tap into those additional resources within our own solar system. So more like that is going to happen. I'm more realistic. I'm not poo-pooing the man's dreams, good luck to him to go out there and give it a go. But I think we've got plenty of things to do on Earth. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't investigate space. I do believe we can create spacecraft that can actually go around and investigate our own solar system. We could potentially create with sort of nuclear-driven spacecraft. There's been designs in this in the 60s and 70s and whatever else. We could explore our solar system and learn more about it and stuff like that. That'd be fine, That would be, a sort of a noble effort in that regard. But don't expect to be able to build civilization out there without building the underlying economics. Yeah. Civilization still needs economics to sort of build. Anyway, snorting taurine is an inside joke in the meat militia Harry Foxbox. I bet it is. I bet it bloody is. Must be on Bart's Discord with Loki. Yeah. Yeah. They all poke fun at me about taurine. That's fine. Yes. But look at my skin. Look at the elasticity of my skin. Look at that skin, how it goes back and all that. Yeah. How old is he? How old is this guy? The other finger's not popping out. Oh, no. Oh, this one. Have to be further forward. You're kidding me. Optical illusions. Yeah. So, yes. Do you take calcium supplements? Definitely not. I consume dairy foods. Uh, and you can have, like, if you want to go, you don't want to consume milk. You've got the option of using like cheeses like brie, which is higher fat, has about 20 odd % protein. The rest is fat. It hardly has any lactose in it at all, and that would be very ketogenic type of and a very good source. Brie would be a very good source, and I like brie of calcium as well. I do. It's one of my favourite cheeses. Just letting you know. And Shelley, yes, Harry and the classroom, listening while getting ready to go to work. Oh, that was about the queue. Use the queue. Fingers, Dickus. How are you, mate? I love the Monty Python name. Yep, well, that was on that. And there's Jonathan. He's probably gone back to sleep. Or he's, I don't know, what time is it in the UK? Hold on, let me just type this in. Uh, oh, yes. Yes, it's midday. Probably he's gone to lunch. That's right. I'm confusing myself. It's in the morning that it's night. God. It is late anyway. Um, oh, yeah. But, yep, we've covered that. Covered it. Then I've tried my most carnival advice on water retention, hydration symptoms, and the only thing that fixes it is tons of salt and water currently. Jab detox protocol to see what happens. Good. Yeah, the old jab can actually also cause some derangements. We know in the bloodstream, especially. Uh, so that I'm not saying that that's the reason. Too much water as well. Having too much water requires more salt. So if you're fat adapted, your body should be producing a bit. But then again, if you've got the other issue here, you may not be able to produce enough water. And the reason for that is because it actually interferes in the mitochondria with water production, because it goes in there and sort of mucks up. It's trying to force to produce more lactate, because it's a bit like cancer. This is why viruses are also associated with cancer, and why this is also associated as well. But we can't say that it actually worsens outcomes, but it does. Turbo cancers, they're called. But anyway, I'll let you Google that. What you can do to reduce lactate levels is taurine, 2 grams per mil, as long as you're not on blood pressure meds and metformin and any of that sort of stuff. Then it's a problem. So you have to start very small, like 0.5 gram, and then get the meds adjusted, and then get them out of your system. You also could be a person like me who loses a lot of salt. Some people, it's like a bell curve. Most people are somewhere in the middle. There's a small minority of people that have a lot of salt retention. They have difficulty getting rid of salt. Other people dump salt like there's no tomorrow, and that's what I'm like. I have to use more salt. If I don't, I have problems as well. So, and also consuming sufficient protein to get that insulin to glucagon slightly higher. So you can actually have at the kidney level, you can have the right signaling. That extra taurine as well is an osmolyte. It regulates. So the extra protein will produce more taurine and actually regulate the ions and the water in the body, both in the cells and in the bloodstream. So because it is an osmolyte and if you've got high blood pressure, it brings it down. If you've got low blood pressure, it brings it up to normal levels. That's what it's supposed to do. That's what osmolytes do. They regulate fluids and pressure. That's why fish that are in the water under high pressure have the highest amount of taurine in them. It's also the Japanese paradox for the C19 and many other things due to taurine. Improved mitochondrial function, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Okay, sorry, but I think religion is the biggest scam out there. That's fine. You can have an opinion. Yes, the problem is you have to explain how this universe came into existence and how it's fine-tuned. Because all that Richard Dawkins can come up with is little green men. And then you have the same problem. Not enough time for them to evolve, become interstellar species in order to create us. So it's... And when we look at all the other faiths around the world, well, they're gods generated within the universe. We know because of the science that we've got up to this point, that there was a Big Bang, there was an earlier time in the universe and we know that from the microwave background radiation. So there was a beginning, whether people like it or not. That clearly is well established. Now, people have come up with a whole lot of different solutions, as I said before, string theory and all this other stuff that actually has been proven wrong. So a lot of physicists now are going back to Christianity. And the reason they're going back to Christianity is because they realize a fine-tuning can only be produced by a mind. We create things because we've got minds. We can create fine-tuned things. Nothing else in nature can just create something. The complexity of human cells is so complex. Most biologists have abandoned trying to create life in a petri dish. They can't, because they know even the rudimentary protein structures can't be built. They can't produce them themselves, let alone randomly happening. Many of them put their hands up and walked away, and most of them are atheists. They've been defeated by unable to do that. And so there's your problem. And when we look at, a lot of people said, well, there's a lot of things in the Torah, for instance, and the Bible that actually, but when you really investigate, you actually find out that that's not the case. Most people thought that the Jews actually went up through the Mediterranean, along the Mediterranean coast. They didn't. They went further south. We've actually now found in deeper water, so even the tsunami did the thing, or these people basically went through shallow water. That's all bullshit. Further south, where it's much deeper, that's where they crossed. And in deep water there, what have they found? Chariots under the water. It wasn't a couple of years ago. And on the other side, they even found the stone that was broken, and they could see where water was given to the Jews fleeing. And they can see, erosion marks. Those erosion marks can only be created by water. This whole area that down that corner of the Sinai, which is close to Saudi Arabia, and the west coast of Saudi Arabia, that's bone dry. The Saudis have to use basically desalination to get water in those sort of areas. And we know they came through there because through that bottom part, which is bordering Saudi Arabia, through, I forget that waterway, it's like a narrow, I forget the name of it, whatever it's called. And that leads into Israel from that way. And that's exactly where the archaeological evidence shows the Israelis coming in eventually. And that's why they said, well, the story's wrong. Well, now they realise it was further south. Then there were certain, what was it, 2 years ago, they actually found these baths in the old city of Jerusalem, which were predicted and discussed in the Bible, but were considered, it's impossible for them to exist. Recent accidental, somebody sort of stumbled on them, and then the archaeologists got into it. So, more and more information. And then you've got revelations. You've got actual revelations of crucifixion and many other things that would happen to the Messiah 700 and 300 years prior. Many people say, oh, that's been fabricated. That's bullshit, because we've found from the Dead Sea Scrolls and other scrolls that we've found that predate Christianity, they say the same thing. There's been no alteration. They're predicting the future. Somebody hasn't told them that knows the future. How are they predicting 300 to 700 years later when there's not even Romans yet or Greeks in that region? When you start looking at this sort of detailed stuff, you start realizing, oh, the predictions that would happen, the new priesthood, the new Jews would become the early Christians, the ones, because there was two breakups in the actual faith, the followers of Christ and the non-followers. So all these things that were predicted have sort of come to pass. The destruction of the Second Temple and the dispersion of the Jews. All these, these were predicted by prophets. They came to pass. God, they were pretty good in their predictions. I wonder why. Somebody must have been telling them, because I don't think humans are that good at predicting. So when you start looking into a bit of detail, because I never did, I was brought up, then I became a full-blown atheist, and I've read the Bible a number of times, and I would use things and manipulate them to try and promote atheism. I was an anarchist, a communist when I was a youngster, and I used to write for my first anti-Christian sort of thing was written I was 15 years old, and I was writing in a newspaper, which was an anarchist newspaper. So I've been through all those movements. I've been through all that. I've read the original stuff, Bakunin, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Marx, all these things, their original works. I haven't listened to some academic. I don't give a shit what academics say. I've actually read their original work, and I know exactly what they think. Both the National Socialists, which are the right wingers, so-called right wingers, the socialists basically, but nationalist socialists, they hate the Jews as much as the only difference between the communists is they think they can rehabilitate them, but they have the same sort of pathology and all that. And it all goes back down to this sort of hatred of God, I fundamentally believe. So, believe what you like. But I would say think about it, because there's so many predictions that your so-called atheist friends can't make, but Scripture does. So coincidences, too many of them. Doesn't make sense. And I only realised when I started looking into it properly and started reading from the traditions, understanding what they meant, and then going back and looking at the Torah and all that and understanding the translation. What did these words mean historically? And then you start, then it start making sense. So yeah, a long-winded way, but you really have to study these sort of things in quite some detail to try and get your head around these things. And remember, this is talk about a relationship. All the other have a philosophical or dialectical sort of some structure to them, where the Old Testament, New Testament don't. It's just a relationship between, no dialectics, a relationship between man and God, telling you, this is what I expect, this is what you've done wrong, and this is how you can actually get back into a good relationship with me. You're being tested to be proven whether worthy of being in a relationship forever in that new earth that's going to be created for us, in a sense. So, yeah, I'll probably make some video at some stage explaining all this in a bit more detail and all that. But it won't be on this one, on this channel. It'll be on the other channel, which is Harry Sopanos Opinions. That's where I do my geopolitics now, religion, whatever. That's where I primarily do it. If you want to subscribe to that and maybe learn a few other things, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard the Phoenix phenomenon and all that sort of crap. I used to believe in that sort of stuff myself. Things are, when you look at fine tuning, when you look at all this sort of stuff, you put all these things together, there's just too many things that have to happen in the right order and right way for the universe to be the way it is. That requires an architect, requires a mind. It's impossible to happen through randomness, as I said earlier. So I don't buy that anymore. And the nail that actually dislodged me from atheism completely, because I'd already given up on multiverse and string theory. Remember, my favourite subject was physics. I used to get 18 out of 20 or 19 out of 20 when I was at school. Pretty much the thing that nailed it for me was the collapse of the standard model of particle physics. When I saw that, that was it for me. That was all done as far as atheism was gone, because then it just became very finely tuned in a highly entropic environment. Impossible for all this other nonsense to be able to happen the way they atheists describe it. Just not possible. Because now the onus is on them to explain how these things can emerge and created, and the little green men bullshit that Richard Dawkins is promoting isn't going to cut it, as far as I'm concerned. When looking at nanomachines in a cell, doesn't it look like technology? Yes, it does. It is exactly that. Very, very advanced technology. It is. That is exactly what it is. Only a mind can create advanced nanotechnology. We can do in a limited way because we're created in the image of God, and we have the divine, we have an ability to understand the divine language. So even though we're creatures created, that material part, that other part, that soul, comes, and that is what gives us some divine nature, and that's the relationship between us. When you just look at people, when they lose that divine thing, they become more animalistic because, they weaken the soul, the connection, because it comes directly from God. That's what I believe. That is the real connection, and that gets amplified. The soul gets amplified in the human body through what we call in Greek, Eastern Orthodox theology, through theosis. We become more divine ourselves. We become more God-like, or mini gods, if you, in a sense, through that relationship, because he is the actual, Christ is the actual template that we're built from. Anyway, exactly. That's why I believe that Orthodox Christology is correct. People can argue with me on that. That's fair enough. Harry, are there any drawbacks on the carnivore diet? We only discussed the benefits. If there are going to be any drawbacks, it's going to be basically because we haven't lived as humans from the beginning. Oh, sorry, humans. We haven't lived as carnivores. I'm thinking about other things, religious things. Let me get my mind back to what the purpose of this channel is. We haven't been living from birth to death as carnivores. The second thing is our ancestors have lived in agricultural societies. As a consequence of that, we have had a number of thousands of years now of adaptation to a number of other foods, domesticated foods, so to speak. And so we tolerate sugar better than a tribal person, even though it's contraindicated because high deuterium long-term is not a healthy thing to do, plus all the other things, glycation, blah, 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 and on and on. But on the other hand, a strict carnivore, that's why I'm not into a lion diet, strict carnivore diet may work for a Hadza or an Inuit, but may not work for us because of some of these other adaptations. So we may need to be a bit more the way we actually design. I always say to people, find out what your ancestors ate. I'll give you an example. I look at Southern Chinese or Southern Europeans. They consume more things like lamb, goat, pork, and things like that. And they do. I don't get any reactions to pork. I don't get any reactions to anything. I also don't get any reactions to salicylate. So certain herbs and spices I can put on that have got salicylates, like coconut products do also. I don't get any reaction. Why? Because I don't have a salicylate. I've got an adaptation. So do a lot of the Chinese. Northern, in Mongolia, Manchuria, those sort of areas, and Northern Europeans, they do have salicylate sensitivities because they don't have any adaptation. They also seem to do better on horse meat, which is similar to beef, and things like that. So when they eat that, they do much better than they do on pork. So there is some variability. So there is obviously some gene expression that's actually happened over multiple generations of slight adaptations because of those slight differences. So your carnivore diet shouldn't be like, you shouldn't be following influences. Forget that. That's just nonsense. Follow your ancestry. What did your ancestors consume? The Irish, for instance, consumed a lot of cod liver oil. So they can't convert carotenoids. So if you're only eating animal fats, as an example, you're not going to be able to convert a lot of the carotenoids, even though you look at the yellow colour, which is both coming from the carotenoids primarily. There is a bit due to the, but the carotenoids actually make that yellow colour in the fat of the ruminant. If you're somebody out of Africa, not a problem. You can convert all those carotenoids that come from the plants that the animal ate into retinol. But if you're a person that's lived in civilization, like an Irish person who's consumed cod liver oil multiple generations and has downregulated the ability to convert those things, because that was your primary source of retinol, of vitamin A, you're going to have a problem. That's why you see all these vegans that come from the British Isles. Their skin becomes orangey. That's the carotenoid buildup in their skin because they can't convert it. Because then the excess of the retinol, if the body doesn't need it, it excretes it through the bile. Most excess retinol gets excreted through the bile. So an Irish person, well, if they've got a healthy, as long as they're not being on a veganised diet, damage their sort of cause problems with their gallbladder, then they may have difficulty in excreting out. So obviously that has an issue on that population. And so there are variations. And so I always, I investigate mine and I notice that I thrive on pork and lamb. And I can do goat as well, but goat is much more expensive and more difficult to find in Tasmania. So I stick to lamb and pork. That's my primary meats. Beef, I'll just have patties. Very occasionally, if I go out, I'll have a steak, but it's not my go-to. I find it, I don't enjoy it. I'll be honest. If I eat a steak, I don't mind it, but you give me a lamb steak or pork, I'll love it. So, but that's me. And so I even have noticed that with Northern Chinese and Southern Chinese, something similar. Looky, how are you, mate? That was my previous comments. Thank you, Shelley. Yep, he's probably gone as well. Yep. I've heard about him. Exactly. You are, Don. You're a Christian mathematician. So am I. We all are. Um, yes. Yes. We use the divine language. You do in your field, and obviously as an engineer, and so do I. It's funny how most of the people that basically are atheists, I find, are mostly people that are in the arts, humanities, philosophy, all these sort of fields, where amongst engineers and scientists, you find far more theists than you find atheists. And let's not forget that the foundation of science was developed and promoted and advanced by by Christians and earlier. And people to say that it isn't the case is nonsense. I mean, in Byzantium, they had basically little miniature robots. You went to the palace, Byzantine palace, and the emperor had there was no Middle Ages in the East, he had like this little machine thing. Most people don't realise even the so-called Renaissance started 200 years earlier in the Greek world. It's only when the Ottomans took over that all the intellectuals went to northern Italy, and then they had their Renaissance. Go and check all the early universities; they're all Greek. You know, who brought the knowledge from the Christian Byzantium world? Just because the West got overrun by Germanic tribal people and got destroyed, and then they ran a society in a very authoritarian way, and religion was forced into line at the time. That's not what the world existed in the early Christians. People need to understand that. In the Byzantium world, you could be a Jew, you could be a Muslim living in Constantinople, and you weren't persecuted. There were cases that happened, but they even happen today and in other parts of the world. But that wasn't the main basis for that. And it usually happened when there was war periods. But that, humans in all war periods, they start demonizing the other person. But that's normal. That's a human condition, not the faith. Anyway, talking to you. What are your thoughts on mitochondrial cancer? So, I've already spoken about it. I've covered it extensively. It's based on deuterium damage and also due to high oxidative stress. Both those are the things that damage the mitochondria, make them dysfunctional, and then normal cells run old programming and become deranged. But I've already covered that in all the others. So you'll have to go back to the early stage. I'm not going to repeat. I'll retract it. Fair enough. Yeah. So, well, you sorted yourself out with your thyroid issue, Lukey, and good vitamin D levels as well. Very important. Yes, brie's a great thing. I think it's one of the best cheeses. I love brie. Absolutely. Even my co-workers at work, they actually have jokes. Did you get the brie for Harry? So, yes, I'm known as the king of brie, or the Greek god as well. That's my nickname on the server at work. It's the Greek god who loves brie. Uh, you can't laugh at yourself, who can you? You're boring, as far as I'm concerned. To brie or not to brie. Oh, yes. I'm doing OMAD today. Just had my heavy meal with eggs and pork. You're a pork love. Good, good woman. Shelley, she's off. Oops, oops, oops. Yeah, getting close to, yes, that time of night. Harry, I have slipped rib syndrome, which blocks my digestive system, gives me gastroparesis. Okay. And about 3 a.m. Oh, my gut twists and turns. Any suggestion? Look, I don't really know enough about this condition because there's a mechanical thing involved with this as well. But I will put it down to something that I'll investigate. Because sometimes you go into the literature and they've done experiments on some animal model causing this problem. In that regard, and there may be some sort of solution. So, Sarah, just you subscribe to my channel, obviously. I suspect. Just leave me a comment, and I will definitely look into it in that regard. Do you know, Stephanie? Yes, I do. Me and Bart disagree with her. So, yeah, I'm not saying she's better than many other people, let me put it that way, but she has a lot of things wrong in that regard. I don't think she really understands a lot of things in physiology correctly. Do places like Tasmania, beautiful place, or other countries far from the equator provide enough sunlight, for example, for someone like you who is from Greece? No, it doesn't, which is much closer to the equator. No, it doesn't. So I tend to try and get some. Obviously, when it's summer, when it's the high UV, I get outdoors all the time as much as possible. Like in the morning, try to get a bit like, so when we have uh, like 10 o'clock, we've got morning tea. I usually tend to have my a bit later, 11 o'clock deliberately, and I may go out for a bit of a stroll for a couple of minutes and then come back. And then, because that's when my cortisol's the lowest, and that's really when it's best to eat at that point. And so I'll break my time restricted feeding at that point, and we'll get out. And then before the sun goes down, I will go out for a while to modulate my circadian rhythms as well. And I do that at home as well. So when I'm working from home, so I try to do all these things in terms of proper sunlight, getting some the vitamin D, because I'm not on vitamin D at the moment. It's sunny. It's summer here, so I'm outdoors and all that. But in winter, yes, I am. I do. I do take, because there's a difference between a tribal person that's outdoors all day long, from dawn to dusk, and the difference between my finger pointing this way, this person, um, an office, working in an office, yes, on a computer all day is a completely different lifestyle. And I may be there from morning, sometimes if I've got a lot to do, because I usually can build up flex, I can work up to 10 hours, I'm allowed to, which is our standard hours are 7 hours 20, but I can work up to 10 hours. And I do sometimes build up flex. I build rapidly. Sometimes I build enough flex to take 2 days, within the month. So, but so that means that I'm going to be indoors for a long time. So in winter, I obviously I supplement, but I don't supplement. I'd be careful. I get quality stuff, which is either has to be in coconut oil, which is highly saturated, highly stable. It's not going to become rancid. You've got two problems with rancidity of oil. One problem, obviously, you're introducing, something that's going to cause lipid peroxidation in your body, oxidative stress, not a good thing. The other thing is it's going to degrade the actual vitamin D, which you don't want. So that's the other thing when you create something which is going to be reactive. So that's why the ones that have got sunflower oil, all these oils are poorer quality. So the sports research one, which has got coconut oil in it, that's fine. So I will take that for the 3 months in winter, 5,000 I use. That's it, what I do for where I live and for the way I live as well, which is a problem. But if, I was back in Greece or I was in the tropics, living somewhere like that, no way. It's so much sun outdoors. It's like Lukey. Luke Gear. He basically goes out in the sun and sunbakes every single day, but he's in Brazil. He can do that because it's sunny every single day. You can do that, you know. And down here, you got to be very careful because lower ozone, the level of radiation is much higher. When I do go out, I make sure, like in summer, I up my retinol intake because retinol, if you're getting 5,000 IUs at least, will actually, because it's a key cofactor for the enzyme, the MMPs, that your liver produces, matrix metalloproteinases. I've talked about this for the last 6 years. Anyway, that's an old story, but a lot of new people probably haven't heard it unless they go and look at my initial live streams, or they go even further back and listen to the stuff that I did with Bart Kay years ago when I first started and covering this. But these collagen degrading enzymes, or turning, too many, you get skin, psoriasis, and all sorts of issues. So getting sufficient retinol can regulate these and reduce the amount of redness in that regard, and the amount of. So I will up that, and as a consequence, I remember when I did the experiment. This is my old subscribers will know this. I stayed out in the sun in very high. This in Tasmania, which is higher than the tropics in summer. I used to burn in 20 minutes doing that, and I was out there for well over 5 hours in just absolute. And all I had is a bit of pinkiness. That's it. No burning, no skin peeling off, no nothing. So that's what I do to deal with that issue in summer because of the high level. And it's probably a reason why people have higher eye problems, cataracts, and things like that in these latitudes, like in southern Tasmania or southern Argentina, or southern, in particular, the tip down Argentina and Chile. There's much higher levels of blindness and issues with cataracts and all that, again because of the lower ozone layer and higher levels of UV radiation coming through. So everybody's worried about 5G. It doesn't even activate heat shock proteins. It's a circadian problem due to blue light at night from those sources. What am I doing? I'm bathing myself in blue light from even the non-native EMFs that are here. Fantastic. What I do for you people. And yeah, it is. It is a bit of an issue. Anyway, probably went a bit too far with that. Yes, definitely don't. Because the problem is they're just repeating the same sort of stuff. It's it's just nonsense. It's what most people do, unfortunately. Oh, another pork lover. Yes. I love people that are pork lovers like myself. Harry, good to hear you talk about faith. I'm paying it. I'm Orthodox Christian. Good for you, Martin. I find that faith is very often missing in the modern world. True. Um, very important. In my personal opinion, and very important to be, the good thing about our faith is the importance of both. It's not only our relationship with God, which is important, but also we're required to do works. And it's not because the works are going to save us. It's because they make us better people. They make our souls better, that we care for others. And that's important in that regard. But there's a few videos ripping her apart. Oh, this is about Stephanie. Yeah, thanks, Scotty. Yeah, true. Yes. I'm not doing tomorrow because I'm over at Dad's and I've got a few things to do there. If it's dry enough, I'm going to fix it. He's got a leak on the top I need to repair at his place. So, yes. I get a free meal as well. And he gets free labour from me. Handyman. He's handyman. But I got trained by him because Dad was very much that, and he trained me, and now I'm sort of, giving back to him. Can I take vitamin D without adding K2? Look, in animal foods, you will get, um, K2 if it's below 30,000. What do you mean 30,000 daily? You shouldn't be taking if you're talking about taking 30,000 IU's. Do not do that. Remember, vitamin D is also a hormone. You shouldn't be taking it in excessive amounts. Okay, the body needs to regulate a whole lot of systems in the body, but you should be below 10,000. And the only time you should be taking, I recommend 5,000 through those months, and you'll get enough K2 in the diet, especially if you're having anything fermented like cheese. You'll get plenty. You should not be taking high doses of vitamin D. It's not required. Even my father continually took, because he's indoors most of the time, so he takes all year round. 5,000 IU's got his levels all the way up to 183. If you're going outdoors and all that, mine is at the higher level, not at Dad's level, but it doesn't have to be. And I limit it to 3 months and all that. And so I'm slightly below. I'm at the top of the normal range. I'm not into that therapeutic range. I don't have to be. So that's the last time I checked anyway. I don't know what it is currently. I couldn't tell you. But I don't care because I think I've worked out, because I've done it for a couple of years and then tested, and that was at that level of the high of the normal. So I sort of repeat. I'm good at being able to repeat most of the things that I've done in the past years. So technically I should have the same sort of levels in that regard. But I don't think you need to take very high. I have never recommended over 10,000 IU's. And if some people have difficulty may have, let's say, the vitamin D genetics where they've got problems in absorption, especially people that come from tropical areas that may have high exposure. And so there's been a bit like, the excess calcium from having a diet heavy in animal food, in dairy products, which is a pastoral diet, those genes, 24%. Well, you've got the same problem with some people in Southeast Asia and people like that who have, lower, they produce less vitamin D because they don't need to, because they're out in the sun continuously. They have a lot of, exposure to radiation over multiple generations, so they've got an adaptation. So those people, on the other hand, may need up to 10,000 IU's to maintain the same levels that I do at 5,000. You get it? So unless you're one of those people, and unless they've tested their genetics and done some tests where they've done 5,000 and they can't jump, and then they do 10,000 and then they get to those higher levels, then they know they have those genes. But also, things should be a bit balanced with the retinol as well to some extent. Just keep that in mind. It's both are required. One seems, because there are cofactors to a lot of enzymes, like in the prostate, the breasts, and all that. In the skin, the dominant is retinol, but it also needs vitamin D. In the breast tissue and the prostate, as an example, for men and women, different things. The dominant, the cofactor for cell proliferation, all that, the enzymes that are involved, there it is vitamin D, and secondary retinol. So it depends on the tissue type, these sort of things. But so these are essential, but not in excess amounts. If you've got a good functioning gallbladder, it should technically excrete, but I wouldn't take. You know, I just wouldn't take. Any of that excess and all that. I think I made my point earlier. Why is feminism being imposed on everyone who benefits from it? Well, if you go back in history, who were actually the biggest proponents to get women into the workforce? Who were the bankers? And why? Because they needed more people to in debt. When you money print and money print and money print, what do you need? You need more population to be able to become indebted because your profits come from other people's debt. Got it? So you need more people. And the more you debase the currency, which we know from money printing that happens, you actually then decrease the price the purchasing power. That means you need 2-income family rather than one. And also, you know why the biggest, it was rich women that actually promoted that sort of approach, but the poor women were against it because they would then, up until then, their men were liable for their debts. After that, what feminism gave them is they now had their own debts. So there is a downside. If you can have one single family or a family that can survive on one income, it gives a lot of freedom to a woman to look after, have kids and, have grandkids and a lot of things and be able to spend more time doing those. Because women tend to be far more, we're into things, men, women into relationships far more. That's why even today, most women gravitate towards jobs that have to do with the relationships, like any lawyer, like other people in certain occupations that have to do with, they're dominated by women. It's not accidental. They're living out their nature. They can't fight against their own nature like we can't, even though we try to, And the problem is, men are sinners as much as women, and they don't realise they're one body. They come from the Creator as one body. And when they realise that, then you realise there's not women, because they only talk about women submitting to their man, but then the man submits to the whole family. It's a double submission. And when you do that, you truly love the person. When you submit or truly have like a one, you view the other person as part of your body, as part of you. That is real love. It's the same sort of relationship with God. It's real love. That's what we've lost with both. That's why I'm against men going their own way and all this bullshit, that also, that's anti-human. It's misanthropic. It's basically one hating the other or one being opposed to the other. You look at Solomon, the way he wrote this poetry about his wife, and she wrote about her husband. It's just describing their different body parts and the way they felt about each other. That's love, guys. The problem is we have a lot of these, obviously, barbarians treat their women very poorly. Certain cultures have or whatever. But when you look at the sort of the way spirituality actually or our faith actually describes a relationship, it's a completely different thing. Completely different thing. And even the so-called slavery, it's indentured service. Today, if you don't pay your debts, you can end up in jail. That's a sort of you're captured, or you have to work extra to pay that off. The indentured service model was up to 6 years, and then you were free. Most of them used to stay because they had the security of living with that family. They looked after them into old age and all that. And you couldn't actually harm them because they weren't a slave. They were just paying off their debts. Did some people mistreat some people? Yeah. But that's the human nature. Don't criticise the faith, And this is where the problem lies. And it's the same thing. Bad men, and usually, who are the bad men? Irresponsible men. They mistreat women, not the responsible men. People of faith, they love their women. They truly love and their kids and their women. They will go out of their way. This is what strong men do. They go out of their way to do everything that they can to protect their families and support their families. But that's what they do. That's what real men do. Unfortunately, we have the concept of irresponsible men. Most men today have been bullshitted, and most women, to be selfish towards each other. You can't have a loving relationship if you're selfish. And let me just tell you something that you need to understand. The home you live in won't be yours. Somebody else will be living in it in the future. The car you have, somebody else will be driving it around. Everything you own and you have will not be yours. So why is that important to you? It's irrelevant. Trinkets, flashy little trinkets, relationships are the bedrock of a real healthy society. We've lost this due to all these movements that have tried to pull us apart. And I'm not saying that there haven't been wrongs that men have perpetrated in the past. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not excusing this bad behaviour. But we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and we've separated ourselves, and we've become consumerists, slaves to our desires, slaves to consumerism, and we're unhappy because no amount of trinkets are going to make you happy. Nothing will. Look at all these rich people who are just completely and utterly deranged. Their wealth does nothing to give them happiness. In some cases, it causes more unhappiness. It's not the amount of trinkets, it's relationships, guys. Work on your relationships. Suppress your ego. Suppress your narcissism. Suppress your misbehavior. Become more humble and less prideful. Pride is a bit worse sin in our faith. But in general, pride and loss, means you can't love other people if you're too prideful. You can't really love other people. You can't really connect with other people. You can't, happiness comes through relationships, good relationships. And to a large extent, we've destroyed this in our modern society. These globalists just want us to pen us in so they can extract the last bit of blood out of us as they can. And they've filled our minds with all this nonsense to divide and rule us and keep us anxious and keep us upset and keep us in conflict with each other, because that's how they can control us. And we're not going after them, so to speak. So I think everybody needs a reality check and rethinking. And through that, you know what? You'll end up with a much calmer inner world. Happier, more content, and you'll come to the same conclusion that I came, racing after, trying to make money, doing this deal, becoming president of the Greek community, connecting with politicians and doing all this sort of stuff. It was all ego. It was all basically me getting better, me getting at the top. Look at me, all this bullshit. No happiness. I felt shit. I was drinking, smoking. I was basically doing all the sins and all that, and I felt completely and utterly unhappy, lonely, and that's what you get from chasing that world. But when you pull away from that, I spend more time down with my father than I ever had, and we joke and sit around and but and I hug him and he hugs me. Something that I never did. And he found uncomfortable to do because he felt that I had some distance between him and me. It makes a big difference, guys. We don't need to be at war with our families either. If our families, we need to be examples to our families, and then they will change. Stop trying to preach to your families. It doesn't work. People are set in their ways. It doesn't work. I give people the evidence, then they can go and mill it in their own minds, as I do on these live streams. But when I'm socially, I don't do that. I don't talk religion with people. I don't talk anything. If people ask me, I'll give them my opinion, but I don't preach because it doesn't work. You need to encourage people to basically build relationships. And when you build relationships, then they're willing to listen. Not only that, also under those sort of, they're more open because you can then because there's no, you've taken away a lot of the barriers. Something that a lot of us have forgotten. For the donation. Thank you, tired looking for name. I can give you a nickname. I used to be really good at those things, giving people nicknames. Yes, I used to be a bit of a bastard. Let me put it that way. Glad to catch your live stream. Thank you. Thank you for being here. You guys turning up, supporting my live stream. It's what supports my channel. It's both of us. See the relationship? This channel, me only, zero value. You only, me not appearing, zero value. It's the relationship. Talking, discussing, sharing. Because all our trinkets are going to stay here. All the trinkets we have, they're going to remain on this planet, and somebody else is going to be enjoying them 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. So that's not important. Relationships are. Anyway, it's past 12. Damn. Let me just go through and see the final, something that really I think oops. Oh God. Will do. No, your liver detoxes. Distilled water does not detox. All it does is give you a lot of water and without a lot of electrolytes. Now, from tap water, yeah, it's going to be better in a sense, but you got to put then, a supplement which is, sort of a trace mineral supplement to put those things back. So yeah, irrelevant. So it's nonsense. As I said, he's probably selling a product, or his mate's selling a product, or whatever. So I don't worry about that. Anything Uh, yeah, look, a lot of people have that, Stefan. So that's that effect on melatonin. But it seems like what happens is the body starts using it for other things as well. And so you're actually being utilized for other things. Because as the body realizes, oh, we've got more taurine in the system. Oh, I'm going to upregulate in the brain some of the pathways to increase the production of new stem cells in the brain to produce new brain cells. So you do get benefits, but it just ends up being in other places um, in that regard. So initially, your body couldn't use it, so it just made you, drowsy. Even Dad had the drowsy effect as well. I didn't, but Dad had the drowsy effect. Um, Again, due to the increase in melatonin that he got from it. So, and I had to then shift it to night for a while until he sort of the body started utilizing it more efficiently, and it was used less from the sort of the melatonin production, which then followed better circadian cycles in that regard. So that's really what it is, So it's just one of those things. We talked about collagen powders. No, I have said that before. Sarah hasn't said it, but I have said it before. It was in regards to somebody asked me a question ages ago in one of the live streams about Laszlo Boris. And I actually mentioned the reason why it doesn't work is because of the taurine issue. Sarah doesn't know about the taurine issue. I can tell you that. She sometimes watches my stuff, so she may find out about it. But it's the taurine that's the missing component. The taurine increases melatonin. It's a key cofactor that's required in the production of melatonin inside the mitochondria. And it also reduces oxidative stress in the mitochondria and helps together with the melatonin produced by the mitochondria, which is different from the pineal gland, completely different, helps with the production and healing of the mitochondria. So that is the missing link. You need to lower the deuterium, which is the thing that's actually damaging the nanomotors, the ATPase, that either get slowed down from 9,000 RPM due to that, or pretty much will get busted if there's too many neutrons trying to go through the ATPase, and as it speeds up and too many neutrons go through, it can bust the nanomotors. More of the nanomotors get busted, less ATP. Yeah, things go to shit after that. As that, and obviously, when people are actually having high deuterium foods like seed oils, which are beyond, I mean, as you guys know, but for the new people that are watching, um, the safe zone is between 100. You don't want to go below 100 because you still need a certain level of deuterium for the collagen structures, you know. Otherwise, there's a problem there in collagen sort of, rigidity and the right sort of tensile strength and, all the other stuff. And in bones, that's the highest deuterium location in the body. And so that's where really steep stuff are required. And then you've on the other hand, if you're eating animal fats, it's usually around about in the middle there. It usually is grain fed, 120 odd. Non-grain fed is 118 for dairy and tallow and all that. Piggy is lower, 115. or 113 for bacon. I don't know why, but pigs are very good deuterium depleters in that sense compared to any other animal, even better than us and many other species. Now, your lowest carbohydrate is legumes, but they've got a lot of anti-nutrients and all that, 138, approximately 36, 38, around there. Then most other sugars are anywhere between 150 to 160, the more refined they are. 180 and over is toxic. Seed oils can go as high as 255, are super toxic. So that's what really does the big damage. It's the seed oils. And it does it two ways. One, with the high oxidative stress that causes because of the primary, secondary oxidative products, the aldehydes that are in there, and then the deuterium component is the thing that really busts those nanomotors at that excessive level. And there's the difference. If you use like most other oils that are cold pressed and whatever else, like avocado and all that, they're about at 130. Even sunflower, unprocessed sunflower oil or canola oil or whatever, unprocessed. That means if you do it the old way, the way the Romans used to basically get rapeseed oil, they used to basically put it on the stone wheel and extract, and you could only extract very little because it wasn't like our modern extraction methods. So you only get very little, and it was very prized and expensive in the Roman market for the rich only that used it. But that was around 130 ppm as well, at the top of the normal range, those sort of oils, which are cold pressed and all that. The moment they're refined, even olive oil, if it's refined, any oil that gets refined, immediately the deuterium goes up because of the refining process. The more refining processing, the greater. That's why processed food has high deuterium levels. It's in the 160 plus range. The more processed food you consume, the higher the deuterium content, the lower, your H1 hydrogen. So there's your problem. It's the higher amount of neutrons flowing through the ATPase doing the damage. Sorry for taking a bit of time to get to you in that regard. Just do that again to say thank you. And thanks for replying on vitamin D. I'm taking 10 to, you shouldn't be taking that amount. Try and sort out my insomnia. No. Could be other reasons driving it. I listen to someone says it needs to be above to sort sleep out, go down. You have to fix up your circadian rhythms. A lot of actually, blue light. I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep properly. I used to have since I started using that and I changed my lighting and got rid of the blue light exposure, I go right through and sleep 7.5 plus or minus hours every night with no interruption. Before, when I was on a sad diet, I was constantly, a couple of times a week, I'd be getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes the whole week. And I'd be absolutely wasted the next morning. Absolutely wasted. Now, also, Jabba the Hutt, if you've done that, you need to do the protocol, which I've discussed in other videos. The other thing is, if you've done that, that can also induce insomnia in some people and also can disrupt the gut microbiome. The bifidobacterias and lactobacillus, and that can have an effect on creating disturbances in circadian signaling and also in your just general state that you are and make things worse. Anyway, that's going to be it, guys. I'm going to basically pull the pin. Thank you for being here. If you've got any other questions, leave them in the comments because it is now 12:30, midnight, and I need to get to sleep. As I said, I've got things to do tomorrow. So thanks for being here. This was an impromptu. So no live streams tomorrow on Sunday because I've got things to do. Next week, which is the 22nd, which is a couple of days before Christmas, there'll be the Christmas special. I'll probably put up postings probably on Monday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. I'll probably put up the posting for that, and then promote there'll be the normal run of the mill, the morning one, which is also the evening one on Saturday evening stateside in the Americas, and the other one which covers from the UK or UK onwards, the Eurasia one, that is in the afternoon, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, but in the UK it's in the morning. So, and in the evening, similar time sort of slot in Japan and sort of areas like that. So that sort of covers the two live streams, sort of cover most of the world for the people that way. Anyway, yes. Good night as well, Scott. Good night. And Jody retracted. Anyway, just leave the question. If I haven't answered your question, I've went past whatever, then So do apologise. There's only so many hours you can can't cover everything. Sometimes certain things need to have a long explanation. Others just a small explanation. It depends on what people are asking. But I do appreciate you being here. Thanks. Have a good day or good night if you're in the Australasian sort of zones. And I will see you in about, what is it? Well, technically speaking, since we're past, we're in Sunday now. So in 7+ days. So see yous.